Amid the astonished gasps of the crowd, the drifting balloon soared into the sky, magician Oz vanishing with it, swallowed by the boundless blue above. Far off, atop a grassy hill, a silver-haired boy chuckled to himself. "Honored great magician Oz, your request to escape the kingdom safely has been fulfilled. Be sure to leave me a glowing review, won't you?" It had been Rhine, of course, who secretly breathed life into the rope, commanding it to slice itself cleanly. The soldiers stationed to watch the circus were also his doing, an illusion, a performance, a setup. All of it, the grand act of a behind-the-scenes magician. To grant a client's wish, I go all in. Honestly, where else can you find such a generous and talented magician as me? Rhine boasted with a smug smile, utterly unconcerned for Oz's safety. He knew the tale. In the original Wonderful Wizard of Oz, this was no perilous flight. No, this was the beginning of Oz's rise to power. Emperor, in fact. Still, Rhine hadn't left things to chance. A quick divination confirmed it, an auspicious omen heralding a turning point in destiny. Another wish fulfilled for one of the so-called children of destiny, and in return, Rhine felt a warm pulse of energy stir within his soul. He snapped his fingers lightly. The air shimmered faintly in response. With Oz's departure to lands unknown, Rhine had awakened a spark of spatial magic. So now I can teleport. How charming. Granted, only to places I've already seen, and not too far. Still, useful. He grinned, imagining the future. Even if the Black Witch Maleficent herself appears, I may not be able to fight her head-on, but I can certainly escape. I'll take Princess Aurora and vanish into the distance. 15 years remain before the curse matures. Plenty of time. Once she's old enough, we'll flee beyond the borders of the Rose Kingdom, wandering the continent together. By then, the Emerald City will surely be built. I'll take her there. Rhine's gaze drifted upward. Clouds drifted across a brilliant blue sky, his mind swirling with dreams of freedom and destiny. Far above, the balloon continued to climb, riding the winds like a leaf on a river. Heavens above, the balloon's still rising. I don't even know where it's going. Oz clung to the edge of the basket, shivering. Cold winds bit at his skin, and anxiety gnawed at his stomach. For an entire day and night, the balloon drifted endlessly, its direction left to fate. Then, as dawn painted the sky in shades of rose and gold, Oz awoke to find himself descending gently toward unfamiliar land, a strange, beautiful realm stretching endlessly beneath him. The balloon touched down hours later, soft as a whisper. Oz stepped out and scathed, blinking at the vibrant colors and alien charm of the place. Waiting for him was a crowd of peculiar people. The men wore pointed, bell-tipped hats that jingled with every movement. The women donned flowing white robes embedded with tiny crystals, catching the sunlight like stars. Did you see that? He came down from the clouds. I swear it. Just a tiny dot in the sky. And then he descended like a divine messenger. You can fly? You must be a great magician. Oh, honored magician, what brings you to our humble land? Their eyes sparkled with reverence. They truly believed him to be a powerful sorcerer. Oz, flustered, blinked. Magician? Me? I'm a stage performer, not an actual wizard. He almost confessed, but paused. These people were clearly gullible, and he was starving. No one here knows who I really am. Why not play the part? A little food and drink in exchange for a bit of theater sounds fair enough. Adopting the practiced flair of a performer, Oz stood tall, hands on his hips, and launched into an elaborate tale. Indeed, I am Oz the Great Magician, from the distant Western Kingdom. At the age of 5, I began studying under the legendary magician Rhine, our nation's strongest spellcaster. You may not know his name, but believe me, his fame echoes through the lands. And I am his greatest apprentice. All of his magic I have inherited. Gasps erupted from the crowd, eyes wide in awe. Oh gods! If Rhine hears this nonsense, he'll murder me. Please, let him never find out. Still, the people were utterly enchanted by his story. Moments later, they prepared a grand feast, offering steaming platters of food and cold water. Oz, famished and parched, devoured everything eagerly. "Great magician, are you satisfied?" a woman asked sweetly. "Very much so. Thank you for your hospitality," Oz replied, wiping his lips. But before he could fully relax, the crowd stepped closer, faces full of hope. Then, "Great magician Oz, please use your powerful magic to defeat the wicked Eastern witch and save our people from her cruel reign." Oz froze. "What? Witch? Is an actual witch here?" His blood ran cold. Looking into their eager eyes, he barely suppressed a groan. "Fight a real witch? Me?" He nearly fainted on the spot. Far beyond the borders of the Rose Kingdom, in a realm untouched by sunlight and hidden from even the most gifted seers, there stood a looming Gothic fortress carved from black stone. Shrouded in a chilling aura of dread, the castle pulsed with dark enchantments, a place where even shadows feared to linger. Within its cavernous throne room, the Black Witch Maleficent reclined upon a throne of gleaming obsidian, her posture languid and regal. A thin wisp of green smoke curled from her fingertips as she reflected on her most recent work with all the casualness of a woman recalling yesterday's weather. "I only shattered a kingdom and laid waste to a few lives," she murmured, a wicked smile dancing across her lips. Hardly something worth brooding over. For a sorceress of her caliber, the fall of a mortal realm was as trivial as brushing away a cobweb. Yet even amidst her satisfaction, a strange disquiet began to stir within her, an itch beneath the skin of her consciousness. Did I forget something? A beat passed. Oh, that's right, the final blessing. Her eyes narrowed. That court mage, Rhine, he never gave his blessing to the princess that night, did he? It should have been a minor detail. But Maleficent was nothing if not thorough and ruthless when it came to the integrity of her spells. She didn't cast curses to fail. Everything she wrought was meant to endure, perfect and unbreakable. And this curse, her curse, was meant to be the most beautiful tragedy of all. She closed her eyes and reached out with her senses, tracing the curse's presence through the threads of fate like a spider checking the tension of its web. Time passed. Silence deepened. When she opened her eyes again, they glowed with a sickly green light. "Intact," she muttered. The curse still thrummed with unrelenting power. The prophecy remained unchanged. At the age of 15, the child shall prick her finger upon a spindle and die. No sign of interference. No disruption in the flow of destiny. Not even a whisper of a blessing woven in to counter it. Maleficent sat in contemplative silence. "They didn't use the final blessing slot," she said aloud, bemused. "How bizarre. Did they simply squander it on something ordinary? Something meaningless? How deliciously stupid." She chuckled darkly. "I almost feel insulted." Still, a thin sliver of doubt coiled around her certainty. She was not one to leave threads dangling. With a flick of her wrist, a crystal ball hovered into view, glowing faintly as she murmured a spell in an ancient tongue. Across the kingdom, crows took to the skies. Her familiars flew through market stalls, palace courtyards, and ale-soaked taverns, her unseen eyes gathering whispers and truths alike. "Did you hear? His Majesty locked the princess away in the tallest tower. No one goes in, no one comes out. He's gone mad, they say. Orders every spindle burned. He thinks that'll save her. Foolish. Doesn't he know you can't outrun fate? Chill. Watch what you say. That kind of talk will get you a cell in the dungeons. Still, they say she's the most beautiful child ever born. A gift from the heavens, they say." Maleficent let the final echoes fade, her smirk returning, sharp as a dagger's edge. "Oh, dear king, do you really believe that hiding her away will save her? How quaint, how utterly human." She rose from her throne with the slow grace of a predator preparing to hunt. Descending the spiral steps of her castle, her robes trailing like smoke, she stepped into the cold, unholy night. A moment later, her form twisted, cracked, and exploded into wings and scales. The Black Witch took to the skies as a magnificent obsidian dragon, her wings blotting out the stars as she soared into the ether. "It's been years since I paid my sisters a visit." Her voice echoed through the night, amused and cruel. "Let's see what they think of my little masterpiece." And with that, the skies split with a thunderous roar as she vanished into the void, her laughter trailing like storm winds behind her.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Rhine and the 12 witches took Princess Aurora to a small town outside the royal capital. Using the illusion magic of one of the witches, they subtly adjusted their appearances to avoid being recognized. Time flew by, and the days passed quickly. The witches took turns caring for the princess, while Rhine stayed by Aurora's side at all times. He would occasionally listen to distant wishes and either teleport to fulfill them himself or summon birds and nature spirits to complete the tasks in his stead. During the day, Rhine served as Aurora's mentor. At night, the witches would take turns teaching the princess. Day by day, Princess Aurora grew up. She was unaware of her noble and unique status, but all the blessings bestowed upon her were being fulfilled. She was intelligent, beautiful, and loved by everyone she met. Her learning speed was astonishing. She never forgot anything she read or heard. Her body remained perpetually healthy, as if gifted by the gods, never feeling fatigue. To maximize the potential of her blessed physique, Rhine designed a scientific exercise regimen specifically for her. After reviewing Rhine's training program, which was centuries ahead of its time, the witches couldn't help but marvel, centuries ahead of their time as well. This is child abuse. She doesn't get tired or sick anyway. So what's the harm in 12 hours of training a day? I've already factored in time for meals and sleep. Rhine defended himself. Why are you looking at me? Wasn't it you who gave her the perfectly healthy body blessing? Despite their protests, the witches couldn't argue with the results. Even in magic, Princess Aurora showed some talent. Although she wasn't as gifted as Rhine, her abilities still amazed the witches. In this world, those with enough talent to learn magic were 1 in a million. The vast majority of people, no matter how hard they studied, couldn't cast even the simplest spell. Occasionally, Rhine and the witches would use funds provided by the king to hire experts in various fields to teach the princess subjects like astronomy, geography, mathematics, history, and natural sciences. Every teacher was, at least once, utterly shocked by the brilliance of the girl who seemed to absorb knowledge like a sponge. Of course, not even the most imaginative teacher could have guessed that the clever, polite, and lovable little girl before them was the very princess described in bardic legends, the one supposedly imprisoned forever in the deepest part of the palace. Throughout her studies, Aurora displayed a charm far beyond her years. Despite her young age, she seemed to possess an enchanting allure that captivated everyone she interacted with. Every rise and fall of her voice elicited a protective affection, making her teachers eager to give her everything they knew. More than once, a teacher was willing to forego their fee or even pay out of pocket for the chance to give Aurora another lesson. When the precocious princess quickly mastered a subject, Rhine and the witches often found themselves struggling with the task of dismissing the enthusiastic tutors. Abades, I beg you, your child is a mathematical genius. I don't want any money. Just please let her become my exclusive apprentice. Out. I know for a fact that you ran out of things to teach her last week and have been dragging it out. Now it's Aurora teaching you instead. Fine. Let her be my teacher then. Get lost. After sending away yet another hired tutor, Rhine massaged his temples and sighed. This is the terrifying power of a blessed charm. It's practically anomalous meme-level stuff. Admittedly, Rhine had to acknowledge that his own appearance had an otherworldly beauty. But Princess Aurora's extraordinary allure came directly from her dual blessings of beauty and voice, making it a supernatural trait far beyond what Rhine could replicate. Aurora was only 7 years old, and her charm had already reached such heights. What would happen when she grew up? Compared to the local witches, only Rhine, an outsider to this world, could truly comprehend the terrifying power hidden within Aurora. On Earth, the internet would call such a power succubus vibes, capable of enchanting anyone regardless of gender or age and rallying support in the most desperate situations. Ryan was convinced this ability was a universal super skill across all cultures. Your Majesty, your kingdom's future is in good hands. With someone like her commanding your army, how could you ever lose? With her as your ruler, how could your nation not flourish? As the days passed, Ryan decided that Aurora's physical training had reached an appropriate level and that it was time for her to formally learn combat techniques. He hired a swordsmanship instructor for her. On Earth, swords weren't the most effective battlefield weapon. They lacked the reach of longer weapons and the armor-piercing power of blunt weapons. But in this supernatural world, swordsmanship was the most powerful and versatile martial art. The princess's swordsmanship instructor was the most renowned swordmaster in the kingdom. His skills were unmatched, and naturally, his pride was just as formidable. If not for the old king's personal intervention, no amount of money could have persuaded this famed swordmaster to take on a student. I never imagined it would be His Majesty himself summoning me and ordering me to teach swordsmanship, the swordmaster mused. His Majesty seemed so serious. Who could this brave warrior be? Someone in need of my guidance. Receiving the king's secret appointment, the swordmaster couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. Could it be a valiant general commanding the kingdom's army? Or perhaps a member of the royal guard? The moment the swordmaster laid eyes on his prospective student, his jaw nearly hit the ground. What? You want me to teach this little girl swordsmanship? The swordmaster was dumbfounded, his trembling hand pointing forward. A few meters ahead stood a delicate little girl with hair as golden as molten sunlight. She looked no older than 7 or 8, her posture graceful and polite. Her serene elegance carried an air of noble beauty. Yes, that's right. The two of you will spar in sword training every day. Ryan pulled out a wooden sword he had prepared in advance. With this enormous, heavy wooden sword, you want me to spar with that little girl? The swordmaster stared at the heavy wooden sword, which was nearly taller than the girl herself, and completely lost control of his facial expressions. Of course not. Ryan immediately shot down the swordmaster's assumption. The swordmaster let out a sigh of relief. Then, Ryan casually tossed the wooden sword to little Aurora. The wooden sword is for her. We wouldn't want you to get hurt. You'll use a real sword. The swordmaster glanced at the sharp, blood-stained sword hanging at his waist. Then he looked at the little golden-haired girl in front of him, who was holding a wooden sword taller than herself and earnestly sizing up her opponent. At that moment, the swordmaster began to question reality. Am I dreaming? Ryan shrugged, wearing an expression that screamed, Isn't this obvious? After all, Princess Aurora was protected by the witch's blessing that made her immune to all weapons. Even if struck by a real sword, she'd be fine. The one who should be worried was this mere mortal, the esteemed sword saint. A few seconds later, the swordmaster was slammed to the ground by Aurora's terrifying strength. As he lay there, writhing in pain, he finally realized, No, I'm definitely not dreaming. With the witch's blessings amplifying her abilities, Princess Aurora's photographic memory and extraordinary learning aptitude were fully unleashed during her sword training. Every move she saw was instantly committed to memory, and when she executed the techniques, it was as if she'd practiced them thousands of times, her movements fluid and seamless. She even improved upon them, surpassing the original. Her eternally healthy physique and immunity to injury allowed Aurora to practice high-risk maneuvers without any concern for harm or long-term consequences. These factors combined to make Aurora a monster cloaked in the form of a young girl. Her progress was astonishing, her growth palpable with each passing minute. Both Ryan and the witches were thrilled by her progress. To be honest, the now monster-like Princess Aurora was becoming increasingly unreal to them. Every time they saw her knock the swordmaster to the ground like a true sword saint, the witches couldn't help but scream internally. Are we sure the blessings on the princess are the ones we gave her? Watching the princess improve day by day, The only one whose mood dampened was the sword master, who was tasked with being her sparring partner and daily punching bag. This golden-haired little girl, what even was she? Despite her petite frame, she possessed monstrous strength. At first, he could rely on his technique and mastery of swordsmanship to hold his own against her. But as Aurora quickly learned his every move, all that remained for him was relentless defeat. One day, the sword master, now bruised and battered, lay in bed tossing and turning. His thoughts drifted to a story that had been circulating around the kingdom for years. It was a tale of a magician who could grant wishes, the sage beyond the world, the prophet who foresees the future, the wizard of miracles and wishes. "I implore you," he murmured. "My wish is to wake up tomorrow morning without any pain." That night, Rhine, who was sleeping in the adjacent room and overheard the prayer, snuck into the swordmaster's room under the cover of darkness and healed him with his most proficient healing magic. The next morning, the swordmaster woke up completely pain-free. No way. The legend is real? Does praying really work? The swordmaster was overjoyed. Seeing that the swordmaster had recovered well, Rhine was equally satisfied. Excellent. This means I can use him for a little longer. That night, the swordmaster lay in bed once again and prayed fervently, this time wishing, "Please let this secret mission from His Majesty end quickly. I don't want to spar with this monster in a girl's skin anymore." Unfortunately, this time, the wish-granting magician did not bestow his mercy. And so, many more days passed. Today, the valiant swordmaster finally fled in panic. Of course, the only reason he was allowed to leave successfully was that Rhine had confirmed multiple times that there was nothing left for him to teach Aurora. "It seems there's no one left in the kingdom capable of instructing Aurora," Rhine said, rubbing his temples. This was an issue he hadn't anticipated when he proposed the Super Princess plan. Princess Aurora was learning too fast and becoming too skilled. No one could keep up with her. If she stays in the kingdom, she likely won't learn anything new. Maybe in a while, we can consider taking Her Highness out of the kingdom to travel the world. After all, with my teleportation ability, traveling would be easy. We also need to gather information on the Black Witch Maleficent. Who knows which country the culprit behind the curse has fled to? There's been no recent news about the Black Witch, and the prophecy hasn't provided any clues. She must have some way of blocking others from foreseeing her movements. Let's also contact His Majesty the King to see if he has any useful information regarding the Black Witch. Rhine gathered his thoughts and gazed out of the window at the blood-red setting sun. He was filled with anticipation for the new, uncharted journey of venturing beyond the kingdom with Aurora. The crimson dusk illuminated the boy's silver hair. By the way, where's Grandma Rosa? It should be her turn soon to take over caring for Aurora. Where has she gone? Rhine turned to look at the violet fairy nearby. Grandma Rosa was the weakest in magic among the 12 witches, so Rhine didn't usually pay much attention to her. Before Rosa left, she mentioned something to me, Violet Fairy replied. She said she had discovered the whereabouts of a powerful magical artifact. She's off treasure hunting for it now and will return once she's obtained it. A powerful magical artifact? What kind? Rhine asked, puzzled. She didn't mention what the artifact's ability was. She only described its appearance. It seems to look like Violet Fairy lowered her head in thought. A tinderbox. Tinderbox. The familiar word instantly jolted Rhine's memory. This is bad. Get her back here immediately. Rhine recalled the classic Andersen fairy tale, The Tinderbox, sometimes known as the soldier and the tinderbox. In the story, an ordinary soldier, with the help of a witch, retrieves gold and a magical tinderbox from a tree hollow. However, instead of handing over the tinderbox as promised, the soldier kills the witch who revealed its secret and keeps the tinderbox for himself. With the tinderbox's power, the soldier gains wealth, kills the old king, becomes the new king, and marries the old king's daughter, a beautiful princess locked in the deepest part of the palace. The story's progression is a quintessential, lucky break leading to an underdog's rise narrative, and its ending was predictable. And now, The one searching for the tinderbox was none other than Grandma Rosa. In the story's first act, the soldier kills the witch to seize the tinderbox. Ryan had never imagined this tale could take place in the Rose Kingdom, the Sleeping Beauty's kingdom. He had assumed that if the tinderbox came to life in this world, it would occur in another kingdom. It seems this world's integration of stories is far more intricate and subtle than I thought. Even as an outsider to this world, it's difficult to predict. Ryan's thoughts churned. Lord Ryan, what's wrong? The Violet Fairy noticed his sudden change in expression and immediately grew anxious. I saw it. A dangerous future, Ryan said solemnly. Grandma Rosa might be in danger. Quickly, we must notify her. But she's been gone for a while now. It might be too late to catch her. And we don't even know where she is, the Violet Fairy said, her face clouded with worry. Earlier that day, along a remote road near the kingdom's border, an elderly, hunched witch with snow-white hair stood before a tree hollow by the roadside and shouted, "Did you get the tinderbox?" This frail old witch was none other than Grandma Rosa. At 173 years old, Grandma Rosa had lived deep in the forest for many years, rarely appearing in public. Only the other witches and the kingdom's nobility knew of her existence. Arnu Beta, among the 13 witches of the kingdom, now 12 after the departure of the Black Witch Maleficent, Rosa was the least skilled in combat magic. However, she had her own strengths. She could occasionally hear strange whispers containing valuable knowledge. These whispers had taught her the magic to prolong her life, allowing her to live to her current age. Not long ago, the whispers had revealed a secret to Grandma Rosa about an ancient hidden chamber created by a legendary magician. Inside the chamber lay a powerful magical artifact, the tinderbox. This chamber was guarded by 3 magical creatures, both terrifying and wondrous. The tinderbox, which could control these creatures, was worth far more than all the gold and silver in the chamber, truly priceless. Princess Aurora is destined to become a heroic rider. Ordinary war horses won't be able to withstand her in battle. The magical creatures summoned by the tinderbox would be perfect as her mounts. Ha! Who would have thought that even an old nobody like me, who's lived for over a century, could contribute to defeating the Black Witch Maleficent? Why get the tinderbox? I'll give it to Aurora as her 10th birthday gift. Oh, I can't wait to see how happy she'll be when she receives it. Grandma Rosa chuckled at the thought of presenting the tinderbox to Aurora. Her wrinkled face scrunched up into an even deeper map of creases, etched by the passage of time. In her mind's eye, she envisioned Aurora's lovely face and the girl's voice, as beautiful as the sound of heaven itself. Aurora's enchanting voice, which could captivate anyone, was in fact a gift Grandma Rosa had personally bestowed upon the young princess during her baptism 10 years ago. The whispers had also told Grandma Rosa how to clear the hidden chamber challenges. It required a peculiar magical ritual. On the correct astrological day, the first soldier she encountered on this road had to be given an enchanted blue-checkered apron. With the spell activated, the magical creatures guarding the chamber would remain docile, allowing access to the gold and the tinderbox without any obstacles. Of course, Grandma Rosa didn't expect the soldier to help her for free. As long as she could retrieve the tinderbox, she didn't care if all the gold in the tree hollow went to the soldier. The gold in the tree hollow would be a windfall for an ordinary soldier. He could live a good life, eat the best food, sleep in a fine house, and use the remaining money to marry a woman he loves, start a family, and live happily ever after. Beneath the tree hollow, faint rustling and occasional exclamations could be heard, along with bursts of laughter. The exclamations came from the soldier's shock at seeing the massive guardian dogs, while the laughter was his joy at discovering the treasure. It seemed everything was progressing smoothly, or so Grandma Rosa thought. At that moment, a voice came from the bottom of the tree hollow. "Pull me up, old witch. Did you get the tinderbox?" Grandma Rosa hurriedly asked again. "Oh no, I completely forgot about it." The soldier's voice echoed up, filled with regret. After a brief pause, the soldier's voice returned. "How about the tinderbox now? Pull me up." Grandma Rosa pulled the soldier out of the hollow. The soldier's pockets, boots, satchel, and even his hat were stuffed to the brim with gold and silver coins. Well then, thank you, handsome and strong soldier. All this gold is yours now. Hand over the tinderbox to me, Grandma Rosa said with a beaming smile. The soldier didn't hand over the tinderbox. Instead, he looked at Grandma Rosa with suspicion and asked, "What do you need this tinderbox for? If you value it so much, it must be a priceless treasure." Grandma Rosa hesitated, lowering her head and stopping herself from speaking further. She saw the greed in the soldier's eyes and knew that revealing the tinderbox's purpose would lead to no good. The next moment, Grandma Rosa's eyes widened in shock. The soldier's sword pierced through her chest. At 173 years old, Rosa was far too slow to react. She didn't even have time to defend herself. As the weakest in combat magic among the 12 witches, Rosa's frail body lacked any protective enchantments to ward off weapons. With a forceful pull, the soldier yanked his sword out. Crimson blood gushed out like a fountain, scalding and fiery. If this old witch cared so much about the tinderbox, it must be something amazing. Now it's mine. The soldier laughed heartily. He then walked away with the tinderbox and gold, humming a cheerful tune as he made his way toward the city. Lying in a pool of blood, the 173-year-old witch stared blankly, still in shock from the sudden attack. Her bulging eyes were open wider than on any other day in her long life. In her pupils, the soldier's silhouette grew smaller and smaller as he walked away with the tinderbox. Her vision blurred as he disappeared into the distance. She could hardly believe the soldier's insatiable greed. Even though he could already live a life of luxury with the gold from the tree hollow, he still coveted the tinderbox, a mysterious artifact whose purpose he didn't even know, and went so far as to kill her for it. Grandma Rosa closed her eyes. As the soldier walked further away, he muttered under his breath, "If what that captured envoy from Interland said is true, and the kingdom really has been cursed, with disaster set to descend in a few years, I'll only get to enjoy my life for a year or two before I have to start planning my escape from this doomed land." 10 minutes later, after confirming that the soldier was far away, the old witch, who should have been dead in the blood-soaked ground, suddenly opened her eyes again. Good. He didn't notice. This old woman, with her chest pierced through, is still alive. Grandma Rosa shifted her body slightly, and a scarecrow tumbled out from under her witch's robes. The scarecrow's chest was pierced clean through, as if a miniature sword had once stabbed straight into it. Thank goodness I had a stand-in to take the fatal blow for me. The injury wasn't life-threatening. In this supernatural world, while most spellcasters lacked robust physiques, strange and peculiar magic often prevented them from dying easily. Unlike Sage Rhine, who had mastered a trace of prophetic power and could sense danger seconds ahead, quickly healing even when his body was impaled, or Black Witch Maleficent, who had long refined herself into a dragon cloaked in human skin, impervious to mundane weapons and immune to most magic, or necromancers who stored their hearts and souls outside their bodies, making them immortal so long as their soul vessels remained intact. Grandma Rosa didn't have such abilities, but as a witch, she had her own ways to preserve her life. She struggled to prop herself up on her elbow and tried to shift her weight to stand, only to fail unexpectedly. Cough, cough, cough. She spat out a large mouthful of blood. No good. The scarecrow only deflected the initial blow, but the sword being pulled out afterward, that really did me in. She repeatedly attempted to rise, or at least summon a wolf to drag her away, or call a raven to bring her healing herbs. But every effort failed due to her weakened condition. The sun dipped below the horizon, and dusk gave way to night. The moon hung in the sky like a silver plate, with countless stars twinkling around it. The chilly evening wind was bitterly cold, piercing through to her very bones. Under the moonlight, Grandma Rosa lay shivering in the middle of the road, trembling as the cold wind swept over her frail form. Every icy gust made the old woman shudder uncontrollably. I survived, only to freeze to death here? How ironic would that be? The thought of such an ending filled her with sorrow, and she closed her eyes with a heavy heart. Not long ago, I was still planning little Aurora's 10th birthday celebration. If only I had invited the Violet Fairy, or even Rhine himself. I really shouldn't have come out alone. Wait a moment, Rhine? That's right. Suddenly, Grandma Rose's dim eyes snapped open, a flicker of hope reigniting within them. How could I have forgotten? They're still away. She turned her head toward the bright moon overhead and parted her lips to chant the many legendary titles passed down through stories. Sage beyond the world, prophet who foresees the future, wizard of miracles and wishes. Far away, in a secluded wooden cabin, Rhine shivered. Grandma Rosa, I hear her. She's in that place. Rhine's silver eyes glowed brightly as he swiftly performed a prophecy. Using the connection forged by the invocation of his titles, he pinpointed Grandma Rosa's location. With the cute. Is it true, teacher? There's news of Grandma Rosa. Beside him, Aurora, her golden hair gleaming, was elated. Moments ago, she had been worried sick about Grandma Rosa's predicament. To Aurora, Grandma Rosa had always left a kind and caring impression. Throughout Aurora's childhood, Grandma Rosa had played the role of a grandmother, showering her with affection. So when Aurora overheard the Violet Fairy and teacher Rhine discussing the possibility of Grandma Rosa being in danger, she had been deeply troubled. The tone of her prayer is trembling. It seems her condition isn't good. Rhine frowned. Violet Fairy, I've located her position. Let's go at once. Aurora, come with me. Understood, teacher. Aurora nodded, grasping Rhine's hand without hesitation. For years now, Aurora had respectfully addressed the silver-haired, youthful-looking Rhine as her teacher. She knew this teacher possessed many wondrous spells. She had watched herself grow taller day by day, yet her teacher's appearance remained unchanged. Her height was now nearly equal to his and might surpass his someday. Meanwhile, neither Rhine nor the witches had gone out of their way to change Aurora's name. They continued calling her Aurora. After all, in the year Aurora was born, many newborn girls were given that name. It was so common among girls her age that no one associated this modestly dressed Aurora with the Princess Aurora locked away in the depths of the palace. Rhine's and Aurora's figures quickly blurred into motion. Moments later, the silhouettes of a silver-haired boy in a pristine, classical mage's robe and a golden-haired, elegant girl swiftly materialized beside Grandma Rosa. Grandma Rosa, what happened to you? Who attacked you? Teacher, please heal her immediately. Aurora, seeing Grandma Rosa's grievous state, felt a mix of heartbreak and anger. Rhine nodded gently, crouching down and letting pure white light bloom in his hands as he cast healing magic. As Rhine worked to heal her, Grandma Rosa briefly recounted her recent ordeal. Hearing her account, Aurora clenched her fists lightly, her clear eyes flickering with a faint, smoldering anger. After killing the old witch, the soldier carried all the gold and the tinderbox as he made his way into the city. This city was none other than the nation's capital, majestic and beautiful. The soldier checked into a luxurious grand hotel, rented the most comfortable room, ordered his favorite meals, and swapped out his worn and mocked old leather boots for new ones, along with an entirely fresh wardrobe. The ragged soldier of the past was gone, replaced by a refined and polished gentleman. In the hotel, people often gathered in the bar on the first floor to discuss the various affairs of the city, some being absolute truths while others were mere rumors. Many of these conversations revolved around the king or the royal family. Today's hot topic was the king's daughter, the princess of the Rose Kingdom. It was said that she was extraordinarily beautiful, a maiden who had been gifted many blessings by witches. Have you ever heard of the legend about the princess? One person in the tavern asked. They say our Rose Kingdom's princess is a little beauty blessed with all the world's wonders. And just like that, the conversation took off. Guests in the inn began recounting, one by one, the tales they had heard about the legendary princess. The soldier was very intrigued by the topic. He set down his mug of ale and pricked up his ears to listen intently. According to the legend, when the princess was born 10 years ago, Not only did foreign dignitaries visit, but every witch and mage in the kingdom also came to bestow blessings upon the newborn princess. The first blessing granted her unmatched beauty, one that could captivate an entire nation. The second gave her a heavenly voice, so enchanting it could make hearts melt. As for the other blessings, no one knew for certain. Some claimed she was endowed with unparalleled grace in dance. Others said she was gifted with a heart as pure and kind as gold, gentle and full of compassion. Regardless, everyone agreed on one thing. The princess undoubtedly embodied all the best qualities in the world. Where can one see the princess? The soldier's curiosity was piqued, and he asked the crowd. He knew that with his former status, he would never have been worthy of approaching the princess. But now, he was no longer just a soldier. He was a wealthy, noble gentleman. My goodness, you actually want to see the princess? What are you talking about? The bartender looked at him in shock. Had this gentleman not been aware of the situation surrounding the royal princess? Every upper-class citizen should have known. A chorus of hisses erupted around the room. No one is allowed to see the princess, the crowd declared in unison. The princess resides in the deepest part of the palace, a bronze-walled fortress only accessible by the king and queen themselves. I've also heard that many foreign princes, having learned of the Rose Kingdom's princess, a maiden said to possess all the most wonderful qualities in the world, snuck into the palace late at night, hoping for just a glimpse of her beauty. Unfortunately, every single prince who tried failed. No one has seen the princess. Not a single person. The more the soldier listened, the more confused and curious he became. Why does the king keep the princess locked away in the depths of the palace? No one knows. Some say it's to avoid a terrifying prophecy. There's a rumor that on the day of the princess's birth, a witch foretold that the princess would meet a sudden and tragic death as an adult. That's why the king wants to protect her. No. The version I heard says that the prophecy stated the princess would marry an ordinary man with no noble blood. The king couldn't tolerate that. Who told you that? It's completely different from what I heard. Everyone started chiming in, debating their own versions of the story. A princess of unparalleled beauty, embodying all the most wonderful qualities of the world, yet locked away in the depths of the palace. What a waste. I'd love to see her, the soldier thought. The soldier's life was now filled with joy. He was wealthy, indulging in fine food and drinks, and surrounded by a group of newfound friends. These companions praised him endlessly, calling him a generous and admirable man. The soldier loved hearing such flattery, basking in the respect and adoration of others. Anyone who complimented him received a small pouch of gold coins as a reward. These so-called friends introduced the soldier to gambling, teaching him the thrill of the game. They would spend entire nights at the gambling table. The soldier spent money like water, placing extravagant bets and generously tipping his companions. However, living the life of a wealthy man didn't satisfy him entirely. Within a week of staying at the inn, the soldier grew bored and felt the need for something new and exciting to break up the monotony. One particularly dark night, the soldier took out the tinderbox, the very one the witch had guided him to find beneath the tree hollow. Striking it against the flint to light a candle, he prepared to illuminate his room. Bang! As the sparks flew, the door to his room swung open on its own. A copper-furred dog with eyes as large as saucers appeared out of thin air, standing right before him. It was the same dog he had seen inside the tree hollow. The soldier froze in fear. He didn't have the witch's blue-checkered apron with him now. No, please don't eat me. To his surprise, the dog lowered its head and respectfully said, "My master, what are your orders?" The soldier was stunned for a moment, then suddenly realized something. "Bring me some money," he said, testing the waters. With a whoosh, the dog vanished. One incredible tinderbox. One incredible dog. After a while, the dog reappeared with a large sack of gold coins in its mouth. Through several tests, the soldier quickly figured out the tinderbox's magical properties. It could summon 3 giant dogs from the tree hollow to serve him. Striking the tinderbox once, twice, or 3 times would summon a different dog. All the dogs obeyed the commands of the tinderbox's master. Bless the heavens! I'm no ordinary man now. I have a magical tinderbox and 3 loyal magical dogs at my service, the soldier thought, feeling increasingly self-important. As the silent night deepened, a new idea crept into the soldier's mind. If no one else can see the beautiful princess, does that mean I can't either? I could try and have the dogs bring. The soldier acted on his idea immediately. He pulled out the tinderbox and struck it to create sparks. With a whoosh, the dog with saucer-sized eyes leapt out at once. The soldier commanded the dog, I want to see the kingdom's princess. Can you bring her to me? The big dog nodded obediently and dashed out the door. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the deep darkness of the night. Seeing that the dog had not refused his command, the soldier felt both nervous and excited. Ha ha! That old witch's treasure is truly incredible. Killing her and taking this tinderbox was absolutely the right decision. However, just seconds later, the soldier suddenly realized something. Wait, didn't the dog turn left when it went out the door? But isn't the palace supposed to be to the right? Turning left would lead out of the city. The direction is completely wrong. That stupid dog must have gone the wrong way. Animals are animals after all. Not exactly the brightest. The soldier covered his face, irritated. Who knew what the dog might bring back, heading in the wrong direction like that? In a cottage outside the capital city, 2 witches were having a conversation. Something's wrong. Aurora's gone. She was just in bed earlier. Do you know what happened? I don't know. I was sleeping like a log. According to their rotation, the 12 witches would take turns in pairs assisting Sage Rhine in caring for Aurora, while the other 10 were free to go about their own business. The shifts rotated every few days. This time, it happened to be their turn. And now, tonight of all nights, Aurora had vanished mysteriously. The 2 witches hurriedly knocked on Rhine's door, seeking the help of the kingdom's mighty sage. They hoped he could use prophecy magic to locate Aurora's whereabouts. Lord Rhine, Aurora is missing. I got up in the middle of the night to quietly check on her, and she was gone. However, when they pushed open Rhine's door, they found only an empty room, with the cold night wind whistling through the open window. Oh no, Lord Rhine is missing too. The 2 witches clung to each other in panic. I heard there's been a gang of child traffickers operating nearby. Could it be that the princess has been kidnapped? The first witch was extremely anxious and voiced her fear. If the princess has been kidnapped by traffickers, that would be very dangerous, the second witch said, looking worriedly out into the thick darkness of the night. Wait, am I hearing this correctly? You're saying Aurora is in danger. The first witch turned her head abruptly, her expression full of disbelief. Did she realize what she was saying? Aurora, who is the danger, being in danger? Of course not, the second witch forcefully corrected her. What I mean is the kidnapper is the one in danger. Oh, that makes sense. The first witch nodded in agreement. What kind of human trafficker could be so unfortunate as to kidnap Princess Aurora, of all people? After quickly discussing their options, the 2 witches realized there was another problem. Wait, did this kidnapper also take Lord Rhine along with her? Then the kidnapper is in even greater danger. Exactly. We'd better find them quickly. Otherwise, who knows what might happen? To the soldier's surprise, after waiting for a while, the dog actually returned with a girl on its back. The dog carried a golden-haired girl who appeared to be fast asleep. She was dressed in plain clothes indistinguishable from those of a commoner, yet her beauty was otherworldly, like a vision from a dream. The soldier took one look at her serene, sleeping face and felt as though his very soul was being drawn in, as though his heart had been cleansed. My goodness, anyone can tell at a glance that she's a genuine princess. The dog actually brought back the kingdom's princess. I thought it had gone the wrong way. The soldier was thrilled. Being a man through and through, he glanced around to confirm that it was the dead of night and no one was around. Seeing that the princess was still sound asleep, he leaned in, intending to steal a kiss before she woke up. What are you doing? Who are you? Suddenly, Aurora opened her eyes. She raised her hand to block the soldier's indecent advance and gently pushed him away, her gaze sharp with vigilance and hostility. It turned out that Aurora had woken up midway through the journey. But out of curiosity about where the dog was taking her, she had pretended to stay asleep, keeping her eyes barely cracked open to observe. The soldier, flustered but not embarrassed, greeted Aurora with a gentlemanly bow. "Oh, beautiful princess, good evening." He showed no fear over his earlier inappropriate attempt, as though it had never happened. The soldier believed that Aurora, having been locked away in the deepest part of the palace her whole life, likely had no knowledge of men, her father, the king, being the only exception, and perhaps had barely even seen other people. He was confident that he was one of the very few living individuals the princess had ever encountered. The soldier relished the thought of such innocence, believing it would make it easy for him to play the role of her life mentor, teaching her about human relationships and the workings of the world. For a princess locked away in isolation, naive and untouched by the world, anyone could position themselves as her mentor. Aurora frowned slightly, trying to assess if "beautiful princess" was just a flirtatious pickup line. "I don't know you, so there's no need to address me with such nauseating titles." Aurora climbed off the dog's back, standing alert with sharp green eyes brimming with cold vigilance. Her voice was extraordinarily beautiful, like the song of a nightingale or even heavenly music, yet her piercing gaze made the soldier's spine tingle. For a moment, the soldier doubted whether the dog had truly brought back the kingdom's princess. He was certain a princess shouldn't have such a gaze. It didn't align with what he'd imagined. Whether she's the real princess or not doesn't matter, he thought. Even if she is the princess, she couldn't possibly be more captivating than the girl standing before me. The soldier had already fallen hopelessly in love with the golden-haired girl from the moment he laid eyes on her. The only flaw was that she seemed far too young, no more than 12 years old. But that didn't matter to him. He could wait a few years before arranging their wedding. "Answer me. Who are you? Why did you bring me here?" Aurora demanded sharply. She glanced around and quickly identified her location as an inn within the capital city. The dog with saucer-sized eyes now lay respectfully beside the soldier. Unfortunately, having been taken while she slept, her sword and armor weren't with her. Fighting with fists and kicks was possible, but not as effective. She couldn't guarantee defeating a lion or tiger in one blow, let alone. Aurora's sharp gaze scanned the room and landed on the sword hanging on the wall. It was the same sword that had pierced through Grandma Rose's chest. The soldier noticed her eyes darting around the room, and his heart pounded wildly, nearly leaping out of his chest. "Oh, what a beautiful girl! Even the way she curiously glances around is breathtakingly lovely. She's examining my room. Good thing I'm staying in the inn's most luxurious suite now. If she truly is a princess, I wonder how this compares to the palace she used to live in. Even if it doesn't measure up, this place is surely new to her. For a princess, it must be quite refreshing." The soldier straightened his posture and composed himself, ready to play the part of an exceptional mentor. He adjusted his tone and stance to appear as a proper gentleman. From the moment he ordered the dog to fetch the princess, the soldier had prepared for the possibility of her waking up. He had already planned what to say to her. "Oh, beautiful girl, let me share a secret with you. This kingdom has at most 6 or 7 years left before its destruction. A horrifying disaster will descend in a few years. When it does, everyone, the king, the queen, the noble lords, even the farmers in their fields, will perish. And I am your hero, here to save you. My magical dogs have incredible powers and can protect us. We can leave this kingdom together and hold a grand wedding in another land." In the vacant room next door, Ryan held a silver mirror, observing the events in the adjacent room through the use of prophecy magic. His eyes suddenly froze as he heard the soldier's words. He hadn't expected the soldier to bring up this particular topic. This was a plotline absent from the original fairy tale. Without a doubt, the disaster that will destroy the kingdom mentioned by the soldier referred to the curse laid by Black Witch Maleficent. That information should have been sealed off. Yet, somehow the soldier knew about it. Indeed, in this blended magical world, Ryan's intervention had altered the course of fate causing many details to shift. It was clear he couldn't fully rely on his foreknowledge as a transmigrator. Ryan collected his thoughts and continued to watch the scene in the silver mirror. Clearly, Ryan hadn't been kidnapped by traffickers. After Grandma Rosa's injury, Ryan had suspected that, just like in the original story, the soldier would use the dog to abduct the princess from the palace. In preparation, Ryan had secretly contacted the king to reinforce the palace's defenses, setting a trap to recover the tinderbox. What was surprising, however, was that the magical dog summoned by the tinderbox possessed an unusual sense of awareness. Realizing the real princess wasn't in the palace, it ran to the small town outside the capital and took Aurora instead. Even Aurora herself didn't know she was a princess. Of course, Ryan had considered the possibility that the dog might seek out the real Aurora and had prepared for it in advance. As the dog kidnapped Aurora, Ryan followed closely behind, arriving at the soldier's inn and observing the situation in secret. What bad luck for him, kidnapping Aurora of all people, Ryan thought, suppressing a smirk as he glanced at the arrogant soldier in the mirror. After confirming with Grandma Rosa, Ryan knew that the magical creatures summoned by the tinderbox were formidable monsters to ordinary people. But to Princess Aurora, with her superhuman strength and invulnerability, they were no more threatening than toy chihuahuas. Dragged away in the dead of night and told by a strange man that the kingdom was on the brink of destruction, Aurora showed no sign of fear. Though she was clearly wary of the soldier before her, she maintained an air of elegance and politeness, displaying a maturity far beyond her years. Her composure was nothing like that of a naive, sheltered little princess who had never stepped outside the palace. "Why do you say the kingdom will be destroyed in a few years? Do you have any evidence?" she asked. The soldier laughed. "Perhaps you've heard of Enderland, our neighboring country, which has long had constant friction with us. I once served in the army. A few months ago, my comrades and I captured a nobleman from Enderland. He told us that, years ago, he had attended a grand banquet in our kingdom as a foreign guest. According to him, at that banquet, Black Witch Maleficent cursed the Rose Kingdom, vowing to destroy it within a few decades. By my estimate, there are only 5 or 6 years left before that prophecy comes true. When the time comes, the kingdom will be overrun with thorns and brambles, and everyone will bleed from their 7 orifices, dying in horrifying agony. And yet, the king has deceived us all. He kept this secret from his people, hiding the truth. The Rose Kingdom was, of course, the kingdom of Sleeping Beauty. Clearly, the soldier didn't know the whole truth. At the very least, he didn't realize that the source of the curse was the girl standing before him. The nobleman also said that Enderland is considering revealing this secret to our people, exposing the truth behind the curse. When everyone learns about the curse, the entire kingdom will descend into chaos. Everything will fall apart. But fear not, I can protect you. I'll take you away from this kingdom before disaster strikes." As he spoke, the soldier puffed out his chest, attempting to showcase his masculinity. To be honest, even the soldier himself wasn't entirely convinced by the nobleman's words. But that didn't stop him from presenting them as fact to the girl in front of him. He believed that a terrifying crisis would surely throw an innocent young girl into panic, and that would be his chance to win her heart. Even if she didn't believe him, he still had the tinderbox. He could simply use the dogs to forcefully take her away. There would be plenty of time in the future to develop feelings. After hearing the soldier's passionate speech, Aurora remained as steady as a mountain, her expression betraying no emotion. She simply looked skeptical. "Newbie." The soldier began to grow impatient and added, "It's the corrupt nobility who provoked the wrath of the Black Witch, and now we must bear the consequences of their sins. If I were king, I would never have angered such a powerful witch." To his surprise, Aurora sharply retorted, her tone resolute and righteous. "Even if everything you say is true, the real culprit is the Black Witch Maleficent who cursed the kingdom. If the king has committed any crime, it is the sin of cowardice. He should have declared war on the Black Witch mobilized the entire army, and hired every mage he could find to kill her and end the curse. Even if everyone perished in the process, it would be better than sitting idly by and waiting for the end. For the past 10 years, Aurora had been raised by Rhine and the 12 witches. She loved this land deeply and cherished her kingdom. She adored the sound of babbling brooks and the bustling life in narrow alleys. She played ball with children in the town square, and no one could beat her, and explored the kingdom's rich history through books with her scholarly tutors. Guided by Rhine's teleportation magic, she had visited many of the kingdom's famous landmarks. Though she wasn't sure whether the soldier's words were true, the thought of her kingdom plunging into chaos and being destroyed in a few years filled her with a burning anger. The soldier was stunned. He never expected this beautiful, flower-like girl, whose height barely reached his waist, to rebuke him so severely, and to say something as chilling as mobilize the entire kingdom to kill the Black Witch, or better to die fighting than await destruction. The soldier felt a twinge of unease. There was something terrifying and dangerous about this golden-haired girl's presence, hidden beneath her breathtaking beauty. Who was she to contradict him? Who was she to say such things? Wasn't she supposed to be the princess, born into seclusion, sheltered from the world? No, this wasn't how it was supposed to be. She should have been obedient, trembling with fear upon hearing his grim tale of the kingdom's future, seeking solace in his arms. He should have been able to stroke her soft, golden hair, comforting the quivering princess in his embrace. The soldier felt a surge of irritation. He was an adult, a soldier who had faced life-and-death battles. Why did a mere child have to argue with him? I'm doing this for your own good, my beautiful princess, if you really are the princess. When the kingdom truly falls into chaos, you'll understand, he said. Then he turned to the giant dog beside him, its saucer-sized eyes glinting in the dim light, and commanded, "Take this girl and leave." The soldier had previously used the dogs to deal with roadside bandits, so he knew just how terrifying they were. They were incredibly strong, with skin tougher than rock and bones harder than steel. The soldier even suspected that the 3 dogs alone could crush the king's royal guards. With creatures like these, he could take the throne any time he wanted. The dog opened its enormous mouth, as large as a barrel, and lunged at the golden-haired, green-eyed Aurora, intending to forcibly take her away. But to everyone's surprise, the girl, who barely reached the soldier's waist, moved with exceptional agility. She deftly sidestepped to the left, completely avoiding the dog's attack. Aurora's movements were so fast that they left afterimages in the air. What the? The soldier froze, his body trembling in shock. The girl's fluid motion was far too practiced, as though she had performed it hundreds or thousands of times. Even he, a seasoned soldier, couldn't fully process what he had just witnessed. What was going on? Wasn't she supposed to be the delicate princess? How did she possess such extraordinary skills? As a soldier through and through, he knew that neither he nor his comrades could ever achieve movements as fluid as hers. No big deal. No big deal. It's just a little girl. At most, she's a bit quick. Am I really afraid of a little girl? The soldier tried to comfort himself while instinctively backing away to put more distance between himself and Aurora. The girl's movements were smooth and practiced, like those of a seasoned warrior. Using the momentum of her leftward roll, she quickly positioned herself against the wall. The soldier's eyes widened in alarm as he realized her intent. Her target was the sword hanging on the wall. In the next moment, with a crisp sound, the blade was unsheathed. Aurora stood poised, sword in hand. Nothing gave her a greater sense of security than a weapon in her grasp. The dog, still following its earlier orders, lunged at Aurora again, its massive body barreling toward her. But the golden-haired girl moved swiftly. The sword in her hand sliced through the air with a sharp, chilling whistle. In the blink of an eye, a moment so brief that the soldier's naked, I couldn't even catch it, the dog collapsed. It fell into a pool of its own blood, convulsing and whining in pain. The creature's agonized cries echoed through the entire inn and beyond, waking everyone on the street. Hot blood gushed out like a fountain, quickly staining the luxurious room crimson. How was this possible? The soldier could hardly believe his eyes, questioning if he was trapped in a nightmare. Ever since summoning the dogs with the tinderbox, he had never seen them bleed. Not a single drop. These three giant dogs had been like wish-granting monsters, accomplishing any task effortlessly. Now Aurora stood amidst the bloodied remains of the dog, its lifeless body sprawled at her feet. Her once pristine white nightgown was now dyed a vivid scarlet. The golden-haired girl, drenched in blood, advanced slowly. Her radiant hair and one side of her beautiful face were stained red, while her right hand gripped the blood-dripping sword with unnerving calm. She looked as though nothing had happened. This eerie and horrifying sight pierced the soldier's heart like a blade of pure fear. Monster! This was no mere girl. This was a monster wearing the skin of a girl. My God, what kind of creature did the dog bring back? The soldier panicked, bolting from the inn. His trembling hands could barely hold the tinderbox as he frantically struck it several times. Whoosh! Whoosh! The other two dogs appeared in the darkness. One had eyes as large as wagon wheels, while the other's eyes were as big as the dome of a tower. That tinderbox, it really is you. The soldier who betrayed us, wounded Grandma Rosa, and stole the tinderbox. The moment Aurora saw the tinderbox in the soldier's hands, everything clicked. Now she knew. This was the man responsible for attacking Grandma Rosa and taking the enchanted artifact. Aurora rushed out of the inn, her gaze sharper than ever before. The soldier was terrified, completely and utterly terrified. He had never felt such overwhelming fear, not even on the battlefield. The murderous aura emanating from the girl was so intense it felt like it was pressing against his back, soaking his shirt in cold sweat. She's going to kill me. No doubt about it. She's definitely going to kill me. The soldier fled toward the edge of the street and into the dark of the night, almost on the verge of tears. Dogs, attack her. Protect me. He shouted commands at the two dogs while running, as though any delay would result in this monster in a girl's skin devouring him whole. The two enormous dogs charged toward Aurora simultaneously. The dog with eyes like wagon wheels bit down on her shoulder. This time, Aurora didn't dodge. But it didn't matter. Its sharp teeth couldn't even leave a scratch on her skin. The other dog, with eyes like a tower dome, clamped its jaws around her as well. The result was the same. It was completely ineffective. The two dogs strained with all their might, trying to tear the girl apart. But it was like biting into something harder than steel. Crunch! Both dogs' teeth shattered simultaneously. Aurora calmly raised her sword and stabbed at the massive dog that had bitten into her. Her swordsmanship was extraordinary, so remarkable that it surpassed even the kingdom's top swordmaster. Anyone who witnessed her wield a sword would praise her as having the finest technique they'd ever seen. These two dogs were larger, stronger, and fiercer than the first one, but Aurora, having been through rigorous training, was far stronger. The cold gleam of her blade flashed under the moonlight. Within moments, Aurora defeated the terrifying beasts. The two dogs, bleeding profusely, fled in panic. The blood they left behind painted an entire street red. Red stained the bakery, the alchemist's workshop, the luxurious inn, and the homes of the people. The blood even flowed into the river, turning its waters crimson. From that day on, the capital had a street with houses forever marked red. The soldier ran and ran, sprinting down the moonlit streets. Huff, huff, huff. I'm exhausted. Did I get away? Have I escaped that monster? The soldier thought back to the scene he'd just experienced. It felt like a dream. What a stunningly beautiful girl. But why is she so terrifying, he wondered. Having temporarily escaped danger, the love and desire he had forgotten in his earlier panic surged back. Suddenly, the soldier felt he shouldn't have run so fast or so far. He even had the urge to turn around and go back. Maybe I can reason with her? She's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. If I could stay by her side, that would be perfect. Just as the soldier slowed his steps, thinking he was safe, a rope lying by the roadside suddenly came to life. With a whoosh, it sprang up and coiled around him, binding him tightly. The rope seemed imbued with life, writhing like a snake. No matter how the soldier struggled, he couldn't break free. Well done. To defeat those 3 dogs, Rora, you've proven yourself to be a warrior capable of standing on her own. Ryan appeared out of nowhere and applauded Aurora. He had deliberately refrained from capturing the soldier earlier. He wanted to witness Aurora's growth firsthand. However, Aurora's face showed no sign of victory or joy. Minter, was the story that strange man told earlier true? Has the kingdom really been cursed? The golden-haired girl wiped the blood from her face with one hand. Ryan nodded gently. Yes, it's true. It was something Ryan would have to tell Aurora sooner or later. What truly worried him, however, was that the soldier had revealed something alarming. The neighboring kingdom of Enderland intended to expose the truth about the curse. Fear is a weapon far more terrifying than swords or spears. If people learned that their kingdom was doomed to collapse in a few years, chaos would ensue. Order would disintegrate. Farmers would abandon their fields, and soldiers would refuse to fight. Enderland could then swoop in and take everything. Aurora sighed regretfully. It's a pity we let the villain who nearly killed Grandma Rosa escape. No, I've captured him. He'll face the judgment he deserves, Ryan reassured her. As he spoke, Ryan glanced back at the inn's room. On the floor, the severely wounded dogs were nowhere to be seen. They had vanished as mysteriously as they had appeared. Clearly, they were still alive, but would only reappear when summoned by their master. From Ryan, the king and queen learned about the soldier's attempted abduction of their daughter. They were furious and had the soldier arrested and thrown into the dungeon. The soldier was locked up in a dark, suffocating cell. The other prisoners in the same cell mocked him. Buddy, you're going to be hanged tomorrow. Terrified, the soldier frantically searched his body for the magical tinderbox, but realized it was gone. Oh no, this is so unlucky. I remember now, when I got tied up by that rope, the tinderbox fell out and rolled into a gutter by the roadside. He was utterly despairing. The next morning, as dawn broke, the soldier peeked through the iron-barred window and saw crowds pouring out of the city to witness his execution. He heard thunderous drum beats, saw the king's royal guards marching in formation, and glimpsed the king and queen seated in a grand, ornate carriage. A large number of townspeople were heading toward the outskirts of the city. Even the king came. Did I really kidnap a princess? No way. The creature I saw didn't even look human. Could it be that the king locked up the princess to hide the fact that she's actually a monster? The soldier's mind swirled with wild speculations. By now, he was more confused than ever about the truth. At that moment, through the iron-barred window, the soldier spotted a hooded boy running fast among the crowd heading out of the city. The boy's face was obscured by his cloak. Hey kid, what's the rush? There's nothing worth seeing until I get there. The soldier called out from behind the bars. He then tried to entice the boy. If you help me retrieve something, I'll give you 4 copper coins. But you must swear to run as fast as you can. The soldier explained where the tinderbox had fallen. The hooded boy immediately ran toward the street where the soldier had previously lived. Please let it still be there, the soldier prayed, kneeling in the dark, suffocating cell. Before long, the hooded boy returned, far quicker than the soldier had anticipated. When the soldier saw the boy holding the tinderbox, he was so overjoyed he nearly jumped up. Here, this is your tinderbox. Now hand over the coins, the boy said. The soldier happily handed over the copper coins and tucked the tinderbox into his pocket. Haha, my tinderbox is still here. As long as I have it and the 3 dogs, the king won't be able to execute me. What the soldier didn't notice was that as the boy walked away from the iron bars, his back turned. A sinister smile curved his lips. Your wish has been granted. A few strands of silver hair slipped out from under the hood, swaying gently in the morning breeze. Outside the city, a massive gallows had been erected. Surrounding it were the king's guards and a huge crowd of citizens. The king and queen sat before the jury in the most prominent seats, 2 magnificent thrones that offered the best view of the execution. The judge loudly proclaimed the soldier's 2 crimes. The first was attacking an innocent person with a sword. The second was kidnapping and attempting to violate an underage girl. The former seemingly referred to the incident with the old witch, though the soldier had no idea how they had discovered him. The soldier was already standing on the execution platform. As the executioner prepared to place the noose around his neck, the soldier suddenly shouted, "I've heard that there's a tradition in this kingdom. A criminal sentenced to death can make one final request before their punishment. If it's a reasonable request, it should be granted." "That is indeed true," said the old king from the stands. "Your Majesty, I have just one small request. I really want to smoke. Please, Your Majesty, merciful and just king, let me have one last cigarette before I die. Surely you wouldn't deny me this final wish." The king agreed to the soldier's request. The soldier reached into his pocket and pulled out the tinderbox. He struck it several times in quick succession, his face lighting up with an uncontrollable smile. The soldier saw his future. Yes, a glorious future. The 3 dogs would appear to save him. One with eyes as large as teacups, another with eyes the size of water wheels, and the third with eyes even larger than the first 2 combined. They might still be wounded, or they might have magically healed. But whether injured or not, they were terrifying, powerful beasts. These dogs would pounce on the judge, the jury, and the king's guards, tearing off their legs, biting off their noses, and tossing them into the air. They would hurl them over 10 meters high, letting them crash to the ground and splatter into pulp. The king and queen would meet the same fate. Or perhaps he would show them mercy and spare their lives, if he wanted to appear benevolent. The people would praise him for his mercy. The surviving guards and the gathered townsfolk would be terrified of him. They would bow to him, escorting him to the king's grand carriage. The 3 dogs would march alongside, protecting him as he took his place as the new king of the realm. As for that golden-haired girl, whose status as a princess remained uncertain, she's a terrifying monster, but I swear she's also the most beautiful girl I've ever seen, the soldier thought, who knew where she was now. If possible, he hoped to reconcile with her. After all, now that he was the esteemed king, no one could be more fitting as his queen. They would hold a grand wedding lasting 8 days and nights. The 3 dogs would attend, their enormous eyes glaring larger than ever before. After becoming king, he would indulge himself for 2 or 3 years. Before the curse-induced disaster struck, he would flee the kingdom with his queen. With his 3 magical dogs, he could live well in any country. The dream ended. The soldier's mouth twitched into a grin. The brief daydream had almost caused him to drool, his gaze fixated on the tinderbox in his hand. Strike, strike, strike. He struck it over and over. But nothing happened. Not a single dog appeared. Why? How can this be? Why isn't my tinderbox working? The soldier trembled violently with fear. He even began to doubt whether everything he had experienced over the past month, the magical tinderbox, the 3 dogs, had been nothing more than a morning dream, an impossible fantasy, much like the illusion he had just imagined. "Looks like your tinderbox got wet. It won't light. Here, let me light that cigarette for you." The executioner chuckled, pulling out a tinderbox of his own, an ordinary one without magic, and lit the cigarette for the soldier. The cigarette was lit, but the soldier's legs gave out beneath him. He collapsed to the ground with a thud. For once, he spoke an absolute truth. This was indeed the last cigarette of his life. The execution proceeded as planned. The executioner placed the noose around the soldier's neck and hoisted him into the air. The crowd of onlookers erupted into cheers. They praised the king, the queen, the judge, and the jury for ensuring that a deserving criminal had received justice. Dangling in the air, the soldier saw among the cheering crowd several people he had met during his days as a wealthy man staying at an inn. Just a few days ago, these friends had flattered him for his generosity, hoping to coax an extra silver coin from the nouveau riche soldier. Clearly, they didn't feel the slightest regret for their behavior now. They no longer had any reason to curry favor with the soldier. The noose tightened mercilessly around his neck. As the soldier kicked in the air, his eyes bulged wider than ever before, almost as large as teacups. Outside the city, among the crowd of onlookers, the silver-haired boy in the hood watched the soldier being hanged from afar. "It seems your tinderbox got wet and is no longer usable," he muttered. The boy, of course, was Ryan. After animating the rope to bind the soldier, Ryan had taken the tinderbox from him. Later, when the soldier begged for help retrieving the tinderbox, Ryan only pretended to walk away, then returned to hand it back. As a magician who granted wishes, Ryan had indeed fulfilled the soldier's request, at least in the most literal sense. But he had twisted the wish slightly. What he gave back was the waterlogged and damp tinderbox. Earlier, when Ryan first obtained the famed magical item, he had performed a divination on it. The results confirmed that a waterlogged tinderbox would temporarily lose its power for a period of time. I'm like one of those devils in stories, exploiting loopholes in people's desires. I grant their wishes literally, but in a distorted way. Ryan muttered to himself in a low voice, a hint of self-mockery in his tone. The tinderbox that summons the 3 dogs is now mine. With a flip of his right hand, Ryan whispered a spell. With a soft whoosh, a cloud of mist swirled, and the tinderbox that had been in the soldier's pocket appeared in Ryan's palm. Retrieve objects once touched. This was a new magic Ryan had acquired after fulfilling the soldier's wish to retrieve the tinderbox. The ability even extended to items Ryan had touched before learning this spell. Quite a powerful conceptual ability, Ryan thought to himself, his mind racing with ideas for its potential uses. What should I call it? Ugh, I'm terrible at naming things. I can't exactly call it Zrumji's instant retrieval, right? Return to owner doesn't feel quite right either. Never mind. Shrugging, Ryan dismissed the naming issue. A while later, once the damp tinderbox had dried and regained its magical power, Ryan teleported himself and the tinderbox to a deserted wilderness. Strike! 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 1, 2, 3. Ryan struck the tinderbox several times. With a series of whoosh, whoosh, whoosh sounds, the 3 dogs appeared in succession, their enormous eyes gleaming, each pair larger than the last. MBS. As expected, the injuries they had sustained were completely healed. Their fur shimmered under the sunlight, looking as if they'd never been hurt at all. Truly magical creatures, with incredible self-healing abilities, Ryan remarked. Unlike before, the dogs now crouched submissively at Ryan's feet, obedient and docile. It seemed they had completely forgotten their former master and were ready to follow the commands of their new one. These dogs were even able to locate the princess outside the palace, in a small town beyond the capital. A truly fascinating power. Can they always sniff out the targets designated by their master, no matter where they are, be it money or anything else? That's quite an intriguing extension of their dog characteristics. I'll have to experiment to see just how far their abilities go. This tinderbox will certainly prove useful in the future. And Aurora's 10th birthday is coming up. According to Grandma Rosa's wishes, the tinderbox will be her gift. The air around Ryan rippled and distorted. His slender figure shimmered for a moment before vanishing from the wilderness. 2 days later, Ryan hosted a grand birthday celebration for Aurora. All 12 witches attended, just as they had 10 years ago when Aurora was born. The gathering was not just for celebration. The witches also quietly discussed when it would be appropriate to tell Aurora about her true identity as a princess and the heavy burden she carried. It was a mission too weighty for a 10-year-old, but it was a truth she would have to face sooner or later. Grandma Rosa kissed Aurora's cheek and personally handed her the tinderbox, just as she had planned all along. The elderly witch also expressed her gratitude to Aurora for defeating the soldier who had nearly killed her. I heard that on the day of the soldier's execution, nearly everyone in the capital rushed outside the city to witness it. You ensured that a criminal received the justice he deserved. All the witches had heard about Aurora's defeat of the 3 massive dogs. They praised her as an extraordinary hero, one who seemed to have stepped straight out of bardic tales and mythic legends. Like those heroes, Aurora was brave, skilled, and, most importantly, possessed a heart of gold. Aurora, my dear child, you are already a hero in your own right. And just like in the stories, every hero needs a steed. Now you can strike the tinderbox and summon the magical dogs to be your mounts. Grandma Rosa pulled Aurora into a warm embrace. The Violet Fairy, leader of the 12 witches, smiled warmly. Indeed, you should try it. It'll be a marvelous sight. Aurora nodded softly. Together with the witches, she stepped out into an open field and struck the tinderbox. Strike, strike, strike. With a series of whoosh, whoosh, whoosh sounds, the 3 dogs appeared one by one. The smallest among them had eyes as large as teacups. Aurora climbed onto the smallest dog and rode it across the field, the other 2 dogs trailing behind her. At first, Aurora's movements were a bit clumsy, but the blessing she had received granted her an exceptional physique and astonishing learning abilities. Before long, she rode with the grace of a seasoned rider. She cut a strikingly heroic figure. The dogs, too, seemed jubilant, their enormous eyes gleaming wider than ever before. As the birthday celebration drew to a close, Aurora carefully tucked away her beloved tinderbox. She clearly cherished this birthday gift, but there was also a hint of worry in her expression. Even amidst the festivities, her anxious demeanor couldn't be entirely concealed. "What's troubling you, my little Aurora?" Grandma Rosa asked gently. Aurora recounted everything the soldier had said after she encountered him. "In recent years, relations between Enderland and us have grown worse. Small skirmishes break out every so often. If what that Enderland captive told the soldier is true, they might soon reveal the truth about the curse. Once everyone knows that our Rose Kingdom has been cursed, the nation will descend into chaos. That will be a disaster. And even if the king and the royal family successfully cover up the truth, it will only make things worse. If this curse really exists, and I already asked my mentor, and he confirmed it's absolutely real, when disaster strikes, there will be no way to fix it." At this moment, Aurora didn't seem like a 10-year-old girl celebrating her birthday, someone who should have been frolicking in fields of flowers. Though her tone still carried a childlike quality, her demeanor reflected genuine concern for her nation. Rhine and the witches exchanged glances, their brows furrowed. Even though the king had locked down all information about the curse, keeping the citizens unaware of the events at Aurora's birth ceremony, foreign guests had also attended that grand feast 10 years ago. Expecting them to keep the secret was obviously unrealistic. It might have been manageable during peacetime, but now, relations between the Rose Kingdom and Enderland were anything but harmonious. Aurora's voice trembled slightly as she continued. Her bright eyes locked onto Rhine. Only now did the golden-haired girl realize that her mentor and adoptive father, who had taught her so much and whom she deeply respected, wasn't much taller than she was anymore. "Teacher, why are the king and queen trying to hide the truth about the curse? If a disaster will strike the Rose Kingdom in a few years, shouldn't everyone be told? Shouldn't everyone who can leave the kingdom, regardless of their occupation, class, or gender, be given the chance to escape this cursed land?" As she spoke, Aurora grew increasingly passionate, her small fists clenched tightly. "Teacher, you've taught me the principles of being a good person. If the curse really exists, shouldn't we tell everyone the truth before the enemy exposes it? The people of the Rose Kingdom have a right to know the truth and to leave this cursed land in advance." By the time she finished, Aurora was practically shouting, her voice carrying an undeniable conviction. The blessing-enhanced power of her voice, melodious and resonant, now seemed almost magical, tugging at Rhine's emotions despite his knowledge of the full truth. With her blessed charisma, Aurora was a natural-born orator. Even I, who know the entire truth, nearly agreed with her for a brief moment. Rhine thought to himself. The Violet Fairy, seeing Aurora so agitated, hurriedly stepped forward to soothe and explain, planning to tell her the harsh reality. Even if you flee the kingdom, the curse is relentless. At most, it would only buy a few more years of life. But unexpectedly, Rhine raised a hand to stop the Violet Fairy. Rhine's mind wandered back to 10 years ago, recalling the king's expression, when he had first suggested sealing the truth about the curse, arguing that once people learn of the curse, they'll all flee the kingdom. He had seen the king's conflicted reaction. He was certain the king's first thought had been to flee the kingdom himself to avoid the disaster. It was only after Rhine personally explained that the curse cannot be avoided by fleeing the land that the king reluctantly abandoned that idea. Rhine, the silver-haired magician, stood up and gently placed a hand on Aurora's shoulder. "Aurora, let me ask you, if one day you were to become the ruler of this nation, replacing the current king, would you do better than him?" Aurora didn't hesitate. She nodded vigorously. "Tell me, what would you do?" Rhine asked. "I know how to fight with a sword, and I know a little magic. I'd find Black Witch Maleficent's whereabouts, gather as many warriors as possible, seek your help and the witch's help, and unite the entire kingdom to challenge her. I'd defeat her and force her to reveal the method to break the curse. Or, if killing the one who cast the curse is enough to break it, then that would be even better." Rhine's lips curled into a faint, satisfied smile. "But the world doesn't deal in what-ifs," Aurora said, lowering her head. "Only the king's child can become king." Then, in a quiet mumble, Aurora uttered a line that nearly made the witches lose their composure. At this point, even overthrowing the royal family wouldn't help, would it? It would just make things worse. Rhine raised his hand and ruffled Aurora's soft, golden hair. "You don't need to become king to do any of the things you just said. I can take you right now to travel abroad, searching for Black Witch Maleficent's whereabouts. We'll find her, and we'll defeat her." Aurora's gaze froze. "We? Just the two of us? Can we really defeat the Black Witch? In the kingdom, aren't there many warriors far braver than I am, and countless mages just as talented as you, teacher?" She had heard tales of Black Witch Maleficent, stories that painted her as an unbeatable and terrifying figure. Aurora couldn't fathom going up against such a legend. Up until now, due to a lack of comparisons, Aurora still had no concrete understanding of her own strength. Doubt surfaced instinctively. Rhine smiled and said, "Aurora, perhaps you're unaware, but right now, you are the most skilled warrior in the entire kingdom. And as for me, I am indeed the most exceptional mage here." Years ago, Rhine's magical prowess was on par with the most gifted of the witches. However, during Aurora's growth, after fulfilling countless wishes in the kingdom, he had gone much farther in his mastery of magic. Now, he could single-handedly resolve issues that would require over half of the 13 witches working together. Pausing briefly, Rhine continued, "Of course, Maleficent is a legendary witch capable of enveloping the entire kingdom in magic. You are not yet strong enough to defeat her in her dragon form, but your talent is extraordinary, and on the journey ahead, your growth will be exponential." Rhine firmly believed that both he, who could harness the power of wishes, and Aurora, who was exceptionally gifted, would gain immeasurably from the journey they were about to embark upon. A spark of determination ignited in Aurora's eyes as she nodded enthusiastically. At that moment, Rhine felt an unprecedented surge of power, akin to a blazing sun. It was the power of a wish. It came from Aurora's deepest desire. "All right, teacher, please take me away from the kingdom. I want to become a true hero, find the Black Witch, defeat her, and then return to this land." Seeing the timing was perfect, Rhine added what he had not yet explained. "By the way, I made a prophecy. The curse of Black Witch Maleficent cannot be avoided, even if you flee the kingdom. Unfortunately, not everyone believed me when I said so. That's why the king chose to conceal the truth of the curse. It wasn't a bad decision. If the public were to learn of it, the kingdom would have fallen into panic and chaos." Aurora suddenly realized how hasty and impulsive her earlier assumptions had been. The Violet Fairy chuckled and said, "So, you're about to take Aurora out of the kingdom to search for Black Witch Maleficent's whereabouts, while training Aurora to become a hero capable of opposing Maleficent. I wish you both success." This had been the plan all along, so the Violet Fairy wasn't surprised. It seemed that everything had been settled, and in just a few days, they would embark on their journey abroad. However, as the witches thought all was agreed upon, Aurora suddenly spoke up. "Wait, teacher, we can't leave so soon. Before leaving the kingdom, I must complete one last task." That soldier, said Enderland, is preparing to reveal the truth of the curse to our citizens soon. When that happens, the kingdom will descend into chaos. At that time, Enderland's army, or should I say their band of thieves, will invade and plunder our treasures, our rare artifacts, and even our livestock. Since you said, I'm already the kingdom's strongest warrior, I should lead the army to drive off the invaders before departing on our journey. Lead the army? How do you plan to become the commander of the troops? How will you make the soldiers obey your orders? From appearances alone, you're just a 10-year-old girl. Who will let you take command? Or, have you already guessed? Ryan's thoughts churned. Teacher, Aunt Violet, Grandma Rosa, everyone. I have a very, very important question. Please, you must answer me truthfully. I beg you. Aurora's gaze turned sharply serious as she bowed politely to Ryan and the witches. Oh, little Aurora has a question? Go ahead and ask, Grandma Rosa replied with a kind smile. Aurora swallowed nervously, raised her chin, and asked solemnly, enunciating each word. Am I a princess? Am I the princess from the rumors? The one who was supposed to be imprisoned in the depths of the palace? And you, my teacher, are you the royal sage and grand mage Rhine from the kingdom's legend? The one who served as an advisor to the king for half a year before mysteriously disappearing? Silence. A deathly silence. Yes, yes. Ryan nodded gently, his expression calm and unwavering. This was something he had always planned to tell Aurora eventually. Aurora let out a sigh of relief, a smile of contentment spreading across her face. Thank goodness. Otherwise, I would have thought I was some magical weapon you created just for battle. No wonder I possess such astounding talent. No wonder I share a name with the rumored princess who was supposedly imprisoned. Though, to be fair, many share that name in the kingdom today. When did you begin suspecting your identity? Ryan wanted to ask, but decided it wasn't necessary. There had been too many clues. A clever girl like Aurora would have pieced it together eventually. I heard it from the people at the tavern and the children I played ball with. They said the king's daughter was trapped in a copper palace deep within the royal compound, never to step outside. I often thought about how lonely she must feel, trapped there, unable to see the outside world. And now I know it was all a lie. She was never imprisoned at all. Aurora spoke softly, her tone filled with endless emotion. The golden-haired girl raised her slender, yet strikingly strong hands and looked toward Rhine and the witches. Teacher, Grandma Witch, Aunt Witch, my talent comes from your blessings, doesn't it? Thank you. Now that I've grown up, can you tell me what happened on the day I was born? Why are there rumors of a princess being imprisoned in the Copper Palace? And what blessings were bestowed upon me? Rhine sat down, and with the witches, they began to recount the thrilling events of 10 years ago. It was a fascinating tale. There was a grand banquet, exquisite food and fine wine, witches, mages, a fire-breathing, unstoppable dragon, a terrifying curse, and a sacred blessing. It began as a story so beautiful it could inspire poetry, only to suddenly descend into darkness, followed by an unexpected twist. What captivated Aurora most was the prophecy made by the prophet, her teacher, about the future she never chose. Aurora listened quietly to the story, fully absorbed. So that's how it is. I'm the source of the kingdom's dreadful curse. You all saw the vision in the mirror, saw the misfortunes that awaited in the future. So, in the end, you didn't choose the original blessing, replacing death with sleep, and instead opted for the path we're on now. Aurora appeared deep in thought. Grandma Rosa, watching the golden-haired girl's serious expression, couldn't help but feel an outpouring of love and affection. Indeed, in the scene back then, the royal sage had chosen an unconventional path that amazed everyone. But it did seem to be the best choice. The king, the queen, and the witches, herself included, had supported this decision, step by step raising the princess to be a warrior capable of slaying a dragon. However, all of this was simply the adults. Rhine could barely be considered one here. Unilateral arrangement. What about Princess Aurora's own thoughts? She was, after all, a living, breathing person. As a baby, Aurora had no idea of the burden placed upon her shoulders. But the Aurora of today now knew everything. From birth, she bore mission. She endured years of rigorous training, unchanging day after day, until now, carrying a responsibility far beyond her years. Would the princess willingly accept the decisions made for her back then? Aurora's birthday banquet was over. The witches departed one by one. Aurora had proven to them that she had become an independent hero, no longer in need of their care. The house grew quiet. The living room was empty and hollow. The little princess rested her chin in her hand, gazing at the stars. Suddenly, she seemed to remember something and turned abruptly to ask Rhine. "So, what happened afterward?" "Teacher, your prophecy back then only went up to the point where I fell into a long slumber, and the kingdom was covered by thorns for 50 years, right? So what about the future beyond that? In the end, was the curse broken?" The night was so silent that even the chirping of distant birds could be heard clearly. After a long pause, Rhine nodded gently and said in a low voice, "I'm truly sorry, Aurora. Back then, I made the decision on your behalf without consulting you. Since that's the case, I believe it's necessary for you to know your future, even if it isn't entirely precise." Aurora's eyes lit up instantly. Rhine continued slowly. "The river of destiny branches into countless streams and possibilities. While I cannot predict the exact details of a distant future, I can glimpse fragments of its tributaries. Most of the outcomes aren't perfect, but in many of them, the curse is indeed broken. Aurora, since you're curious about the road not taken, I can show you the best, the most perfect, and the most flawless ending among them. This is your rightful privilege to see." Rhine pulled out a silver mirror, the same one he had used 10 years ago to reveal the future. Aurora fixed her gaze on the smooth surface of the mirror, barely breathing. This was a path not chosen. Ripples spread across the mirror's surface, and an image emerged once more. It showed Aurora pricking her finger on the spindle, the curse taking hold, and the kingdom's lands overrun with thorns and brambles. 10 years later, the vision of prophecy played out again. Lines of text appeared around the edges of the image, labeling the scenes. Legends about this kingdom began to spread, a tale of a beautiful princess who lay sleeping. From then on, many princes came to explore, hacking through the brambles in an attempt to reach the palace. But none succeeded. In the vision, one prince after another appeared, slashing at the thorns. They fought to cut through the hedge that barred their way, trying to reach the palace sealed by layers of overgrowth. But the thorns seemed alive, closing in around them. The trees shifted their positions, tripping the princes up. It was as if the brambles, thorns, and trees had become countless hands, grasping them tightly, holding them inescapably. The princes struggled, cried out in agony, and ultimately died painful deaths. More ripples spread across the mirror, and for a brief moment, the image faded into darkness. New captions appeared. Many years passed. Finally, exactly 100 years later, another prince set foot on the cursed land. In the mirrored image, a prince clad in regal attire appeared. He stood tall and proud, but his face shimmered with a hazy light, making his features indistinct. Judging from the outline, he was likely a handsome prince. When the prince approached the hedge of thorns, all he saw were shrubs adorned with beautiful flowers. He passed through the hedges effortlessly. As he walked forward, the hedges closed up tightly behind him, almost as if welcoming his arrival. Seeing this scene in the mirror, Aurora was bewildered. Why did all the other princes get entangled and killed by the thorns, brambles, and bushes on this cursed land? But when he came, all the obstacles disappeared. The hedges even opened up a path for him. Could it be he's one of the Black Witch's underlings? That's why the cursed plants didn't attack him, but instead cleared the way for him. "Princess Aurora, you really are my student," Rhine thought, amused. "You've hit on the exact same suspicion I had. But, Aurora, your guess is utterly unromantic. Where's your sense of poetry?" Rhine maintained a composed expression, but he couldn't suppress his inward laughter. Based on the original fairy tales, Rhine believed this was a poetic interpretation a symbolic exaggeration of the concept of destined love. After all, in the much older version of the story, Sun, Moon, and Talia, it was not a prince but a neighboring king who awakened Sleeping Beauty. This king, upon seeing the Sleeping Beauty, was overcome with desire and, while she was unconscious, violated her. The Sleeping Beauty only woke up later, after giving birth to 2 children, Sun and Moon, when one of the babies, while nursing, accidentally sucked out the cursed splinter. Afterward, the Sleeping Beauty married the king who had violated her. Compared to that, Charles Perrault's and the Brothers Grimm's adaptations were far kinder and much more idealistic, rewriting the tale to have a destined prince rather than a rapist king awakened the princess better aligned with people's romanticized expectations of a prince and princess story. The hedges parting, the thorns retreating, the flowers blooming on the trees. All of these were meant to illustrate the beauty of this perfect moment. Yet, in a world of real magic and fantasy, even Rhine found it hard to explain the peculiarities of this phenomenon. The young mage shook his head lightly and said, "I don't know either. Perhaps, after 100 years, the Black Witch's curse had weakened enough to pose no obstacle. Or perhaps he is your destined love. When he stepped onto this cursed land, even the world itself welcomed him." Oh, destined love. Aurora's eyes widened, filled with infinite doubt. But I don't even know him. The image in the mirror continued to change. The prince stepped through the pathway made by the parting hedges, walking through a sea of crimson flowers, heading further in. Everything was eerily quiet. Finally, he reached the ancient palace and pushed open the door to the small room where Princess Aurora lay asleep. There, on the bed, was none other than Princess Aurora herself. She slept soundly. The mirror immediately gave a close-up of sleeping Aurora. Compared to the golden-haired girl standing before the mirror now, the Aurora in the image appeared older, closer to the traditional idea of a beauty, as she had fallen into slumber at the age of 15. The Sleeping Beauty in the mirror was as stunning as the real girl now, breathtaking and enchanting. Her delicate features carried an almost magical allure, capable of ensnaring one's soul. However, she lacked the sharp, indescribable strength in her gaze that the current Aurora possessed. She seemed more like a soft and fragile flower, evoking feelings of tenderness and protection. The prince's eyes widened as he looked at Aurora, unable to take his eyes off her. As he gazed at her, he couldn't help but bend down and gently kiss the sleeping princess. The blessing took effect, and the curse was lifted. In the mirror, Aurora awoke instantly. She opened her eyes and gazed lovingly at the prince who had saved her. The prince carried her out of the palace. Before long, the kingdom's slumbering curse gradually lifted, and people began to wake up one after another. However, after a century had passed, the kingdom was no longer the same as before. The land was overrun with twisted trees and wild weeds, and every building was blanketed in vegetation. The mirror displayed a new set of text. Not long after, the prince and Aurora held a grand wedding ceremony. They lived happily ever after and grew old together. The colorful scenes in the silver mirror gradually dimmed and faded away into darkness. That's it, Aurora finally reacted, sounding surprised. The best, most perfect ending among all the possible futures is just this, Aurora muttered, sounding slightly disappointed. So, in the end, the culprit behind everything, Black Witch Maleficent, didn't face any punishment at all? She's such a powerful witch and has already transformed herself into a real dragon. She's bound to live for many, many years. What if she rises again and tries to destroy our kingdom a second time? Who would stop her then? And lastly, that prince, I don't even know him. He's from 100 years in the future. His father probably hasn't even been born yet. Then, we're just together? What kind of bizarre development is that? The blessing says the curse can only be lifted by the kiss of someone who truly loves me. But he's seeing me for the first time while I'm unconscious. He hasn't even spoken a single word to me. Doesn't love take time? Princess, your thought process is far too advanced for this era. Wait, is this all my fault? How am I supposed to explain this to the king and queen? Ryan chuckled lightly and replied, Who knows? Perhaps love at first sight counts, too. His tone grew ethereal and otherworldly once more. Your Highness, you've now seen the road not taken. 10 years ago, on that disastrous night, two paths lay before you. One was paved with flowers and poetry, the other with thorns and storms. At the time, you were just a swaddled infant, far too young to decide. I had no choice but to make the decision for you, choosing the path you're on now and placing this heavy destiny upon your shoulders. Over the years, to prepare you as the warrior foretold by prophecy, the witches and I have subjected you to rigorous training. And soon, we will embark on an unknown journey across the continent, one that may bring unpredictable dangers. To fulfill this destiny, you've endured so much. I'm sorry for the hardships you faced, my princess. For the choice I made on your behalf, I owe you an apology. Ryan finished speaking and bowed deeply to the little princess in front of him. Aurora, however, shook her head vigorously and quickly helped Ryan back to his feet. No, it's not like that, teacher. It's me who should thank you. I also want to thank my father, my mother, the witch aunts, and Grandma Rosa. Thank you all. If I'd followed the original trajectory of my life, I would have been locked in a brass palace, knowing nothing about the world, ignorant and incapable. My literature teacher once taught me that a great person once said, Among all the misfortunes in the world, the greatest misfortune is being unaware of one's own misfortune. Soon, Enderland would reveal the truth of the curse to the public, and chaos would ensue. I would have been stuck deep within the palace, only able to hear my maids reporting the disasters outside. Other than shedding tears, I wouldn't have been able to do anything. Actually, I probably wouldn't even understand what a disaster is, because I would never have stepped outside the palace. It was you, teacher, who gave me the opportunity to change everything with my own hands. Thank you. When the kingdom's current troubles are resolved, we'll embark on a journey across the continent together, searching for the Black Witch's whereabouts. Even if the outcome isn't perfect, at least I will have tried, and there will be no regrets. Aurora's and Ryan's concerns were far from unfounded. Even before Aurora's birthday, a terrifying rumor had begun to take root in the Rose Kingdom. No one knew where the dreadful prophecy had originated. It could have been the drunken gossip in taverns, the reckless claims of some astrologer, or perhaps one of the guests who attended the princess's birth ceremony spreading the tale firsthand. In a short amount of time, the kingdom has been cursed by the Black Witch and will be destroyed in 5 years, spread like wildfire. Every day, the old king was overwhelmed by the bad news arriving from all corners of the kingdom. Farmers stopped tending to their fields. Bakeries and breweries ceased operations. Wealthy families packed up and fled the kingdom overnight. Even the once disciplined military began to mutiny. In the streets and alleys, people whispered that the king of the Rose Kingdom was a terrible, incompetent ruler. They blamed the king for angering the fearsome Black Witch and dooming the nation. Faced with the growing tide of bad news, the white-haired old king was forced to deliver a public speech. He declared that even fleeing the kingdom would not help escape the curse. He also promised that there was a way to end the curse before the disaster truly struck, that the royal sage who mysteriously vanished 10 years ago was actively working to dispel the curse and would succeed before long. But by now, the people no longer believed the king's words. The Rose Kingdom was no longer the beautiful, peaceful land it once was. From the royal capital to small towns and rural villages, not a single place was free from chaos. Even during the day, it wasn't unusual to encounter robbers on the streets. After all, with the kingdom supposedly doomed in 5 years, why bother following the rules anymore? And that wasn't even the worst of it. At the height of the kingdom's turmoil, foreign raiders came to take their share of the spoils. This invasion seemed long premeditated. Enderland's army launched a surprise attack on the Rose Kingdom, invading towns, looting wantonly, assaulting women, and setting fires everywhere. Up ahead is the Rose Kingdom. Take whatever you want, as much as you can carry. The gold and silver coins from the wealthy, the sculptures in the city center, the beautiful women. They're all yours. Their soldiers have already lost their morale and are nothing like the disciplined army they once were. They won't be able to stop our iron cavalry. This was the promise Enderland's officers made to their soldiers before the invasion. And in reality, the soldiers did far worse than their officers had promised, inflicting atrocities tenfold more terrifying and cruel. No, why has it come to this? In the royal palace, the king was in anguish and despair. By now, the old king had grown even more frail, with not a single black hair left on his head. He wasn't even sure how much longer he could hold on under the constant deluge of bad news. It must be those Enderland bastards. They must have deliberately leaked the news of the curse. It has to be them. Their nobles attended the princess's birth ceremony and witnessed firsthand when Black, which Maleficent cast the curse. They know all this. The old king roared in fury, his voice echoing through the royal palace. He wanted to order the army to drive out the invaders, but most of the soldiers no longer obeyed his commands. At that moment, the king remembered he might still turn to Lord Rhine, the royal sage. Not long ago, the young mage had visited the palace to inform him of the soldiers' crimes. Just then, two figures entered the palace and approached the king and queen. "Father, mother, I can lead the army and drive out the invaders." It was Aurora who spoke. The golden-haired girl stood in the palace doorway, framed by the morning sun. Her petite and graceful figure cast a long shadow on the ground, and her face was obscured by the backlight. Seeing their daughter again, the king and queen were moved to tears. Behind the girl, the silver-haired mage Rhine walked slowly. The boy's appearance was exactly as it had been 10 years ago, untouched by the blade of time. The old king donned his armor and personally visited the royal guard, the elite soldiers of the kingdom. In his youth, the king had been a brave and capable general, but his aging body could no longer support him in battle. So he appointed a general far younger than anyone expected, a young girl, to lead the elite troops in aiding the frontline defenders. Every soldier who saw their new commander was stunned, exclaiming in disbelief. None could imagine that their leader would be a girl who looked no older than 12. They were convinced it had to be a joke. Yet before the sun set that very day, Aurora proved herself to every soldier. The once disorganized and demoralized royal guard underwent a miraculous transformation. By nightfall, they swore their loyalty to their new commander, willing to follow her to the death. Despite this, no one connected their new general with the princess of legend who was said to have been imprisoned deep within the palace. Aurora led the elite troops to the front lines. The next day, the raiders from Enderland returned. Charging down from the hillside, they easily tore through the Rose Kingdom's flimsy defenses. Aurora's former swordsmanship instructor, now an officer in the army, mounted his majestic steed. But even he, facing the ferocious enemy, felt a deep sense of helplessness. On the battlefield, individual skill had its limits. After learning the truth about the curse, the soldiers of the Rose Kingdom had long since lost their fighting spirit. They raised their weapons and shouted a few symbolic war cries before scattering in retreat. Such a fragmented army was naturally powerless against the invaders. Arbeta. The soldiers of Enderland laughed as they brandished their scimitars, slaughtering every enemy they encountered. For over a century, the once prosperous neighboring kingdom had never been this vulnerable. The swordmaster officer fled on horseback, trying to block out the sound of slaughter behind him. At that moment, reinforcements arrived from the rear of the battlefield, troops sent by the king. This unit was clearly elite. Their formation was tight, their discipline impeccable, their battle cries resounding, and their horns blaring. Each soldier fought bravely, striking down enemies with relentless ferocity, their bodies soon drenched in their own and their foes' blood. At the head of this army was their commander, charging ahead of the troops. Her mount was not a horse, but a massive dog, with eyes as large as tea bowls. Two even larger dogs followed her closely, one with eyes the size of mill wheels, and the other with eyes as massive as a tower dome. The dogs used their enormous jaws to grab the invaders, hurling them high into the sky. Those who fell to the ground were either dead or severely injured, and those flung the highest were reduced to bloody pulp. The commander, accompanied by the two magical dogs, cut through the enemy ranks like a god descending to the mortal world. She crushed large swathes of the invading army with swift and decisive strikes. "Fire the arrows! Fire the arrows!" The invaders drew their bows and unleashed a rain of arrows, aiming to kill this formidable commander. Dozens, even hundreds of arrows shot toward her. But the moment the arrows touched her, they all turned to ash. No weapon, crafted by man or born of nature, could harm her. The commander rode her mighty dog across the battlefield, gripping her weapon tightly in one hand as she broke through enemy lines. With her other hand, she raised a war horn and sounded it amidst the chaotic battlefield. The piercing, rousing sound of the horn tore through the sky like a battle hymn from the heavens. It ignited the blood of every soldier in the Rose Kingdom, awakening the fighting spirit buried deep within their souls. "Charge! Drive out the invaders!" The soldiers of the Rose Kingdom, who had been retreating in disarray, and the fleeing officers, all rallied upon hearing the horn's call. Courage reignited in their hearts, transforming their morale completely. Hot tears streamed down the faces of the soldiers and officers, a mix of grief and fury boiling in their blood. Her voice had the power to pierce hearts, to move even the hardest of souls to tears. "Charge! Charge! For the kingdom, for His Majesty the King. Arrows and blades can't harm our commander. She is under divine protection." To the soldiers of the Rose Kingdom, the commander riding the massive dog, flanked by two even larger dogs, had become an unshakable symbol of hope on the battlefield. As long as they followed her lead, victory was assured. If she charged, the army would break through. If she stood, the war would not be lost. Her charm could captivate nations. Her every move stirred the hearts of all who saw her. Thus, the commander riding the giant dog led the kingdom's soldiers to a decisive victory, painting her silver armor crimson with blood. As the sun set, the blood-red twilight cast her figure in a long shadow across the ground. The scarlet hues of the setting sun mingled with the blood spilled by the soldiers, blurring the lines between them and staining the rivers and hills the same color. On a distant hillside, the old king, clad in armor, listened to the triumphant battle hymn. His eyes grew misty with emotion. The old king gazed toward the heart of the battlefield, where his daughter fought valiantly under the blood-red glow of the setting sun. His thoughts drifted back 10 years, to that fateful night when the kingdom-wide celebration was interrupted and the dreadful curse descended. He recalled the prophecy spoken by the Magi. When this warrior rides across the battlefield on her steed, even the most disordered army will submit to her charisma and obey her commands. When this warrior sings the battle hymn before a broken army, even the most undisciplined soldiers will rally again, willing to fight and die for her. I believe this warrior can lead your Majesty's army, slay the Black Witch, and end the curse at its root. The invaders were driven from the kingdom. For a long time afterward, no one dared to trespass on the lands of the Rose Kingdom. This was because a divine warrior, a figure of legend, had burned her heroic image deep into the minds of every fleeing invader. The survivors, those fortunate enough to escape back to their homeland, exaggerated the details of that epic battle, sparing no terrifying embellishment. With dramatic gestures, they recounted tales of terror, painting the Rose Kingdom as a land protected by gods who sent a divine warrior to its aid. They claimed that this warrior, accompanied by 3 monstrous beasts, was impervious to blades, lances, and arrows. In the days following the war, miracles began to appear throughout the kingdom. The morning after the battle, 1,000 birds of all colors, shades of the rainbow, took to the skies above the Rose Kingdom. They flew in formations, creating patterns and words in the air, telling the story of the divine warriors sent by the gods. At night, Some claimed to hear foxes whispering to themselves in the grass, mentioning the divine warrior and how the kingdom's curse was destined to be broken. Fishermen who set out to sea encountered a terrifying storm, only for it to miraculously calm. When they brought their catch ashore, they found strange notes hidden in the bellies of the fish. Upon returning home, one fisherman found his blind wife had miraculously regained her sight. The people said it was the will of the gods. The Rose Kingdom was a nation blessed by divine protection. May the king be blessed by the heavens. Few noticed the hooded, silver-haired boy weaving through the crowds at the locations of these miracles. Excellent. Now the people truly believe that the gods are protecting the kingdom and the royal family. Even the dreadful curse of black, which Maleficent will surely be broken. Praise your wisdom, Lord Rhine, said the old king, deep within the palace. It's just some knowledge from beyond this world, the sage thought to himself. From that day on, the Rose Kingdom gained a new legend, in addition to the tales of the imprisoned beautiful princess and the wish-granting magician. In the grandest, most luxurious inn in the capital, on the first floor where travelers and patrons gathered in the tavern, the stories of the kingdom's legends were being retold over drinks. Hey, newcomer, have you heard about it? That legend. The bartender, suddenly a bit tongue-tied, leaned closer in excitement. Do you mean the wish-granting magician? No, not that one. Ah, then you must mean the king's daughter, the beautiful princess said to embody all the world's finest qualities. No one's seen her, of course, because she's locked away in a brass palace that only the king and queen can enter. No, not that one either. The bartender handed a bottle of ale to a guest, his expression filled with uncontainable excitement. I'm talking about the legend of the Valkyrie sent by the gods to save our kingdom. My order is, find the black witch Maleficent. In the clearing, 3 large dogs glanced around, sniffing left and right, following their master Rhine's command. Finding nothing, the dogs all flopped to the ground, stuck out their tongues, and pitifully gazed at their master, who held the tinderbox in hand. As expected, the black witch Maleficent must be very far away, well beyond the range of the tinderbox's magical dogs. Of course, even if Maleficent were nearby, she might have ways to hide herself from magic and other supernatural forces. Rhine dismissed the dogs and tossed the tinderbox back to Aurora. The two returned to the palace, where they sifted through a large stack of documents piled on the table. These are the intelligence reports compiled by His Majesty and the witches. They detail the origins of the black witch Maleficent, where she might have gone, and other clues. These records pointed the way for the journey he and Aurora were about to embark on. According to the intelligence, Maleficent was not originally born in the Rose Kingdom. She had traveled from another country to settle here long-term about a decade before Aurora's baptism ceremony. No one knew how long she had lived or where she had learned her terrifying magic. It was only discovered that Maleficent practiced dreadful black magic, mastering the arts of curses and torment. She could summon dark creatures to serve her at will and even transform into a black dragon. Furthermore, her mastery of magic seemed to surpass that of the other witches in the kingdom. Of course, it wasn't until that catastrophic night that people truly recognized her power and horror. The records also mentioned that Maleficent had once spoken of sisters from beyond the kingdom. Naturally, these were not blood-related sisters, but witches who studied black magic alongside her. Maleficent and her sisters occasionally held gatherings or communicated through magic to discuss new dark spells and how to concoct bizarre potions. The ingredients they used, of course, were ghastly things like frog eyes, spider webs, toad saliva, and umbilical cords of stillborn infants. The gatherings of black magic witches appear to be quite an extraordinary thing, Rhine said with a slight frown. If they were to face multiple opponents as powerful as Maleficent, the thought alone was despair-inducing. In this continent, where countless stories intertwined, what kind of figures could possibly be part of Maleficent's coven? Rhine couldn't help but wonder. He continued reading through the documents. According to the files, Maleficent had never mentioned the specific names of her so-called sisters. She had only occasionally hinted that some of them had become queens in various countries. The queens of other nations. This range is way too broad to even begin searching, Aurora said, leaning in. Ryan's gaze froze on one particular line of text. The passage described how Maleficent once boasted to the Violet Fairy that one of her sisters was not human, but an ocean hag living in the depths of the sea, skilled in crafting strange potions. This ocean hag resided in the kingdom of the merfolk, deep beneath the ocean waves. Since she rarely surfaced, Maleficent communicated with her through a magical mirror. Maleficent had even complained about it. An ocean hag living in the kingdom of the merfolk. This might be our breakthrough. If Maleficent is still in contact with her, this ocean hag might know where she is now. According to the kingdom's historical records, the kingdom of the merfolk lay beneath the southern coastline's vast seas. Having identified their first destination, Ryan and Aurora had one last task to complete before officially setting off. Bidding farewell to the king and queen. In the deepest part of the palace complex, beyond many walls and buildings, stood a brass palace, a place said to have housed a beautiful princess in legend. Beta. In reality, it was nothing more than an abandoned palace left by the previous dynasty, usually empty most of the time. But today, perhaps for the first time in 10 years, the beautiful princess from the kingdom's legends truly stood there, to bid farewell to her parents. The old king nodded gently. The aged monarch offered a weary smile and removed the crown from his head, slowly lifting it toward Aurora's golden-haired head. The act of an old king removing his crown and holding it above the head of a 10-year-old girl looked almost absurd. This was the fulfillment of a promise made 10 years prior when the old king vowed to a magician to pass the kingdom to the warrior who could save it, declaring them the new ruler. The old king hovered the crown over the girl's golden hair, as if measuring whether the crown size fit. My daughter, I'm already too old. When you and the sage return from your journey, this crown shall truly belong to you. After speaking, the old king pulled the crown back. Aurora bowed slightly, using the court etiquette her instructor had taught her to deliver an elegant farewell. Farewell, father, mother. I will travel with the sage to foreign lands in search of the black witch Maleficent. We will find her, defeat her, and end the dark shadow looming over this kingdom. One day, I shall return with the sage to take your place as the ruler of this land, father. During this journey, I will work hard to learn how to become both a great hero and a worthy ruler. The elderly queen dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, wiping away her tears but saying nothing. Nearby, a small magician clad in flowing robes smiled and nodded at Aurora, saying, "Let's go, my future queen." The sage and the future queen bid farewell to the current king and departed from the brass palace. Walking through the palace grounds, Aurora gazed at the distant mountains as they went. "Teacher, I think by the time we return, I will have become the ruler of this kingdom, and you will have become its legend." In the past, Aurora had been taught by a special tutor in elaborate grammar and refined rhetoric, and the clever little princess had mastered them all, speaking now with the polished tone of a poet. Father told me that 10 years ago, after you helped him, you asked him to spread your story, to let the world know the tale of the magician. This must hold some special meaning for you. So when I become queen, I will do the same. Teacher, I will ensure your story is sung, your deeds recorded in history, and statues of you crafted by artisans. I will summon scribes to chronicle every tale from our journey and compile them into books. Artists will paint the most unforgettable scenes, and they will never be forgotten. Bards will sing these stories by campfires and wells. Many years from now, the events of our journey will become beloved legends, turning into the bedtime stories by every child's pillow. Imagining such a scene is truly exciting. The young girl raised her head, gazing at the azure sky and the fluffy white clouds. A glimmer of hope sparked in her eyes. Aurora glanced again at the silver-haired boy standing before her, a boy who would never grow older. He had looked exactly the same when he became her teacher during her infancy. Now, as she grew closer to womanhood, the small magician's appearance remained unchanged. Time seemed to have stopped for him. Aurora reached out her hand to measure their heights, confirming that her head barely reached Ryan's shoulder. Giggling, she teased, "Teacher, are you never going to grow up? I bet in just 2 or 3 years, before the curse is lifted, I'll be taller than you. Even when I'm old and gray, you'll still look exactly the same, won't you?" Ryan remained silent, quietly walking by her side. He could envision such a scene, but found himself surprised by how far into the future a 10-year-old girl could imagine. Who can say what the future holds? Ryan finally said after a long silence. Aurora turned her gaze once more to the distant horizon, her thoughts soaring into the clouds, her face lit up with a blooming smile. "Teacher, one day I will become nothing but bones and dust. Yet you will still walk this earth with the same unchanging appearance. By then, your name will be legendary across the land. On this journey, I will learn how to become an extraordinary ruler and strive to become the greatest monarch in the history of the Rose Kingdom, a name remembered for generations. When I leave this world, people will say that the Rose Kingdom once had a great queen, and my deeds will be passed down. In this way, the length of my story might try to catch up to your eternal life. Though I'll never truly match it, I hope it won't be left behind too quickly. Even centuries later, when you walk this earth, you might still hear people telling the stories of our journey. And in those stories about me, people will say that many years ago, the kingdom's queen was given 13 blessings at birth, burdened with a great destiny. She was raised by a wise, scholarly, and prophetic magician, one gifted with countless extraordinary abilities. Heavens, that sounds so epic, just like the legends I've heard before. As she spoke, Aurora's eyes grew deeper, filled with contemplation and yearning. Like King Arthur and Merlin, perhaps. Ryan mused himself. "Your grasp of philosophy and grammar is quite good," Ryan remarked, unusually quiet today as he tried to sound more mature. "It seems those teachers I hired for you weren't a waste." Ryan averted his gaze from the girl and looked up toward the snow-white clouds on the horizon. The clouds, like a gentle flock of sheep, strolled lazily across the vast pasture of the blue sky, basking in the warm sunlight. He, too, had long been looking forward to this journey. This world was vast, immensely vast. A kingdom like the Rose Kingdom was merely one among countless nations in the western part of the continent. And to the east lay the mysterious and opulent lands of the Far East, a place even more wondrous and enigmatic. As a being with eternal life, Ryan understood that he was destined never to be confined to such a small fragment of the world. Repeatedly fulfilling the wishes of the same child of destiny diminished the effect over time. Generally, one such figure could only offer 2 significant and effective wishes. Ryan knew that to become the legendary magician worthy of epic tales, he needed to find more children of destiny during this journey. Suddenly, Ryan felt a fiery and passionate desire ignite beside him. He knew this was Aurora's wish. To learn to become an exceptional warrior and a great ruler, defeat the Black Witch, and lift the kingdom's curse. This was the heaviest and most fervent wish the Wizard of Miracles and Wishes had ever carried since arriving in this world. The kingdom's former sage led the future queen onward, their figures growing smaller as they ventured further away. For the past 2 months, in several small southern countries near the Rose Kingdom, many people had witnessed the following peculiar sight. A silver-haired boy and a golden-haired girl traveling together. The boy appeared to be no older than 12 or 13, while the girl looked even younger. The boy had an air of scholarly refinement, often seen reading a book under the gentle sunlight. The girl, on the other hand, was more lively, yet her playful demeanor still carried the elegance of a noble child. Both children were extraordinarily beautiful. Their bright, clear eyes resembled crystalline lakes, exuding an otherworldly charm. They seemed as if they had stepped out of the pages of a fairy tale. The girl, in particular, was remarkable. She had an innate charm that made people feel drawn to her. Her voice was melodious, like the song of a springtime lark. Not a single innkeeper or shop owner could resist giving her a discount when they saw the adorable golden-haired girl. The 2 children were polite and well-mannered, staying in inns every night, which suggested they carried plenty of money for their journey. However, no one ever saw any family members or servants accompanying them. Many speculated that they were half-siblings, explaining their different hair and eye colors. Some said they were children from a wealthy family, having run away to escape their parents' control and embark on a journey to foreign lands. Others suggested that some disaster must have struck their hometown, forcing the children to leave their home after losing their parents. But no one knew the truth, that they were a former sage and the future queen of a prosperous kingdom. One day, a kind innkeeper curiously asked the two beautiful children, "Children, where are you from? Did something happen to your family? Do you need help?" Aurora responded, "The day I was born, a catastrophe struck my homeland, and my family was cursed. That's why we're traveling far, far away, to find a way to break the curse and save them." Her answer was honest enough. "Thank you for your kindness, good sir, but we don't need help. This is a mission we must complete ourselves," Ryan added. "Then may the gods protect you both," the innkeeper said, offering his blessing. "And may the gods protect you too, kind sir," Ryan replied. "Do you have any wishes you'd like to come true? Miracles often favor the kind-hearted." The innkeeper scratched his head and thought hard for a moment. "I don't have any wishes, really. I've been through tough times in my youth, but now I own an inn, have a wife and daughter, and live a happy life. Apart from my bad leg, I have no regrets." The next morning, just as the innkeeper woke up, he discovered the two children had already departed before dawn. As the innkeeper stood up, he suddenly froze in shock. To his astonishment, his leg, crippled for more than a decade, had miraculously healed. It was not only restored but felt stronger and healthier than it ever had, even in his youth. Not everyone the children encountered on their journey was as kind-hearted as the innkeeper. However, from time to time, malicious bandits would try to take advantage of the cover of night to rob these seemingly unprotected, wealthy children. "Boss, we've checked. There's no bodyguard, no servant, no one around to keep these kids safe. They're really traveling alone." "Perfect. Let's act tonight. They look like they're loaded. We'll take them out." The bandits chuckled wickedly, their eyes filled with greed. They downed their last drinks with sinister laughter, unaware that these would be the final sips of their lives. Later, those bandits were never seen again. They seemed to have vanished into thin air. Other bandits and human traffickers with similar intentions met the same fate, disappearing without a trace. As more time passed, the story of the two children began to spread. Yet, as it traveled through word of mouth and retellings, the tale became distorted. People started to say that there was a pair of siblings whose parents had been cursed by a demon and left bedridden. The two children, driven by desperation, left their home, journeying across mountains and wilderness to find a legendary rainbow-colored flower atop a sacred mountain. This flower was said to have the power to break curses and cure their parents. According to the legend, a magical sprite was so moved by the children's determination that it secretly protected them. When the children encountered man-eating beasts, the sprite would use its magic to drive the creatures away. When they ran into murderous bandits, the sprite would transform the criminals into ugly toads. Those who heard the story praised the children's bravery and wished them success in finding the miraculous flower, so they could return home and heal their parents. Later, two brothers, both scholars specializing in linguistics and history, began collecting and compiling folktales and legends from the continent. Through interviews with storytellers and scribes, the scholarly brothers unearthed this tale. "Brother, this is truly an interesting folk legend, widely spread in the southwestern part of the continent," one of the brothers said. "This story exists in several variations, but the protagonists are always a pair of siblings seeking to break a family curse. I think we should document it." "All right, let's call this story The Siblings and the Rainbow Flower, then." Of course, that's a tale for another time. At the end of the second month of their journey, while sitting in a rented carriage, Aurora gazed out at the retreating forest and asked Ryan, "Teacher, I remember you have magic to teleport over long distances. Why are we walking, riding, and traveling by carriage instead?" "I cannot teleport to places I haven't been or am unfamiliar with. So we have to measure the land with our own feet or rely on horses, carriages, and ships, the young mage replied. But once I've been to a place, returning becomes much easier. Then, after we defeat the Black Witch Maleficent, we can return to the Rose Kingdom on the same day to share the good news with everyone. Of course, Rhine said with a smile. Aurora sighed again. But no matter if it's by carriage, ship, or foot, it's all so slow. Why isn't there a faster, more convenient means of transport? A faster means of transport. Rhine froze momentarily, struck by a thought. I believe there will be in the future, Rhine said. Humans are clever and always inventing new tools. Long ago, people could only walk on foot. Later, they invented wheels to conquer the land and boats to conquer the seas. Rhine lifted his chin, his mind wandering far. He thought of the days before he arrived in this world. 100 years from now, 200, 300 perhaps, people might invent strange vehicles made of metal, powered by the burning of coal and fire, running without needing horses to pull them. Aurora imagined the strange tools the mage described and smiled. Teacher, I'm sure you'll live to see that day. Her words made Rhine's eyes freeze momentarily. His body trembled, a chill creeping up his spine, and he fell into a long silence. For the next few minutes, Rhine didn't say a word. Leaning against the carriage's backrest, his thoughts drifted to another matter. At present, this continent's development level was roughly equivalent to the Middle Ages. But not all fairy tales fit seamlessly into a medieval-like setting. The Grimm brothers' fairy tales, collected and compiled by Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm, largely took place long, long ago. However, Andersen's fairy tales later broke from tradition, often set in contemporary times, reflecting the 19th century historical context, making them hard to completely detach from that era. And after them, authors like Oscar Wilde created new fairy tales with distinct characteristics of their time. From the kingdom's historical records, it seemed that the history of this continent and Earth were strikingly similar. If I truly could live for a long, long time, what might the future of this continent look like? Rhine couldn't help but wonder. After a long journey, the mage and the princess finally reached the southern coast, gazing out at the boundless sea. The water was so blue, like a pristine, washed sky. The water was so clear, like the brightest gemstones. Golden sunlight spilled across the waves, sparkling as though sprinkled with fragments of gold leaf. The waves rose and fell, breaking into foam as white as freshly fallen snow. The books say that beneath this ocean lies the kingdom where mermaids and other intelligent sea creatures live, Aurora said. One of the Black Witch Maleficent's sisters in black magic was supposedly beneath these immense waves in the Mermaid Kingdom. If Maleficent was in contact with this sea hag, she might know where Maleficent was. Gazing at the turbulent waves, the princess furrowed her brow. But how we get down there? And even if we manage to go under, how can we find the Mermaid Kingdom amidst the vast sea? And even if we do find it, how would we communicate with them? I read that mermaids are highly hostile toward humans on land. Some even deliberately cause disasters, attacking ships that pass through their waters. If the two of us humans manage to enter their kingdom, we'd definitely be unwelcome. Who knows? They might even attack us. Aurora frowned, realizing only now how daunting the problem was. Her face filled with concern. Was the first major challenge of their journey already this troublesome? Unlike the worried princess, the young mage appeared perfectly composed, as though everything Aurora mentioned posed no problem at all. Rhine understood well that the claim mermaids are terrifying and cause disasters to attack ships passing through this sea stemmed from records in Rose Kingdom's literature. However, the Rose Kingdom was a landlocked country. These accounts of the Mermaid Kingdom were, in truth, third or fourth-hand retellings, embellished tales from sailors of foreign lands, and a blend of vivid imaginations. From his careful study of these texts, Rhine discovered that the supposed evidence of mermaids causing disasters and attacking ships boiled down to this. When certain ships passed through the area, sailors occasionally reported seeing groups of mermaids floating on the surface at dusk, holding hands and singing hauntingly beautiful songs. The songs, more enchanting than any human singer could produce, praised the depth and beauty of the ocean. Yet their lyrics were chilling, as though urging the sailors not to fear sinking into the sea and to embrace the ocean's splendor. To the sailors, however, nothing was more terrifying than the ocean depths. If it were just eerie songs, it might have been dismissed. But what truly frightened them was that nearly every ship that heard the mermaids singing met disaster shortly afterward. Even when the sea was calm like a lake, moments later it would rage. The sky would darken, black clouds would gather, and a furious storm would roar, raising waves towering over 10 meters high that swallowed ships whole. Most sailors sank into the ocean, just as the mermaid songs described. The few survivors who escaped these maritime disasters told horrifying tales, calling it the curse of the mermaids. From then on, every ship entering this sea dreaded the sight of mermaids and their singing. If anyone spotted a group of mermaids surfacing and singing their ethereal melodies, the crew knew their ship was cursed. Some sailors covered their ears or plugged them with wax, desperate not to hear the mesmerizing but ominous tune. Others wept openly, resigned to the storm swallowing their ship and lives. The sailors' cries mixed with the mermaids' haunting songs, carried on the sea breeze, creating a nightmarish scene. But to Rhine, the so-called mermaid's curse was likely just a misunderstanding. According to the Little Mermaid, the Sea King's daughters enjoyed rising to the surface, holding hands, and singing in praise of the sea's beauty whenever a storm approached. Clearly, the mermaids didn't understand how terrifying the ocean was for humans. Because they lived in the sea, mermaids were incredibly attuned to its temperament. They could predict storms with precision and chose to sing their praises before the ships, just before the storms hit. But to humans, especially in this magical world, it seemed as though the mermaids' singing summoned the storms, singing about the ocean's beauty to sailors who feared sinking, and then having a storm actually hit. It's no wonder humans viewed them as harbingers of disaster and monsters, Rhine thought wryly. Having realized this misunderstanding, Rhine knew Aurora's worries were unnecessary. The princess's voice pulled him from his thoughts. So, should we find a guide familiar with the underwater world? The world is vast. There might be a mage who knows or has even been to the Mermaid Kingdom. There is such a guide who understands the Mermaid Kingdom, Rhine replied. Who? Aurora perked up with curiosity. The sage beyond the world, the prophet who foresees the future, the wizard of miracles and wishes. Former court mage of the kingdom and a future queen's mentor, Rhine answered with a smile. You're talking about yourself? Aurora rolled her eyes, already accustomed to her teacher's peculiar sense of humor. Well then, honorable guide. First question, how do we get into the sea? Aurora asked. Rhine flipped his hand over. The tinderbox Aurora carried appeared miraculously in his palm. Strike, strike, strike. He struck the tinderbox 3 times. With a whoosh, the dog with eyes the size of tower domes, the largest of the 3 magical dogs, appeared on the beach. Rhine gently stroked the dog's fur and murmured an incantation. The dog's form began to shift rapidly, transforming into a strange, enormous fish resembling an anglerfish from Rhine's previous life. The giant fish opened its mouth, and Rhine, taking Aurora with him, stepped inside its belly. The fish then leaped forward, diving into the depths of the ocean with them. The fish's belly was transparent, allowing them to see the underwater world. On its head was a chandelier-like structure that glowed, illuminating the dark seafloor. Aurora raised the second challenge. But, my guide, this sea is vast and endless. How are we supposed to find the Mermaid Kingdom? Rhine smiled again and commanded the fish, Go, swim to the Mermaid Kingdom. Rhine didn't know the exact location of the Mermaid Kingdom in the ocean, but that didn't matter. The fish, in essence, was a transformation of the tinderbox's magical dog, imbued with its inherent wonders. Rhine had conducted dozens of experiments with the 3 dogs after acquiring the tinderbox, testing their ability to find various targets. No matter how unusual the object of the search, as long as it was within a certain range, the dogs could always locate it. From buried antiques to a specific individual, their noses unerringly detected the target's position. No wonder they could find wealth for soldiers, though it was unclear which wealthy family's treasury they plundered, or discover that the kingdom's princess was not in the palace. Ryan mused. In fairy tales, epics, and folklore, many supernatural powers are absolute. Ryan surmised that the tinderbox's summoned dogs had an inherent ability to find any target within a certain range. The fish, now transformed from the dog, seemed to sense the command and began swimming purposefully in a specific direction. Before long, the fish descended to the seafloor, the scene was truly spectacular. The seabed was alive with seagrasses and strange trees whose names Aurora couldn't even guess. The branches and leaves of these plants were as soft as silk, swaying gently in the underwater currents as if imbued with life. Looking up, one could see schools of vibrant fish darting through the upper layers of the sea, resembling birds soaring in the skies above the ground. Oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. Aurora turned her head from side to side, her eyes opening wider than they ever had since the day she was born. In just these few seconds, the sights before her surpassed all the beauty she had ever witnessed in her life. She believed this view would astonish anyone in the Rose Kingdom, far exceeding the sum of the magnificent sights most people there would see in their entire lifetime. For a moment, a strange feeling surged in Aurora's heart. If her destiny had not been altered by her teacher when she was born, if the witches had chosen a different path for her, the one leading to her destined slumber, she would never have had the chance to witness this dreamlike wonder. At this very moment, she would surely still be locked within the brass-forged palace, with a square patch of blue sky and a few shapely white clouds outside her window representing her entire world. The more she thought about it, the more she felt grateful. Grateful that 10 years ago, on that fateful night, the sage of the kingdom had chosen a different path for her. The giant fish carrying Rhine and Aurora in its translucent belly swam onward for a while longer until they came upon a palace, a splendid structure built from coral, amber, and pearls. This is my first time seeing so many large and beautiful pearls. Any one of them is more lustrous and flawless than the pearls on my mother's crown. Pressing her hand against the translucent belly of the giant fish, Aurora exclaimed in awe. "That's the Sea King's palace," Ryan explained. "The gardens outside the palace are divided into sections, each belonging to a mermaid princess. We've entered the Mermaid Kingdom." Aurora glanced curiously at her teacher, who was rapidly catching up to her in height. "We're both visiting here for the first time, right? How does he seem so familiar, like a guide returning to an old haunt?" Then again, Aurora quickly accepted this notion. Maybe mages are just that knowledgeable. As a warrior, I don't need to concern myself with such things. It's just like the scenes described in books from my past life. No, seeing it with my own eyes is even more breathtaking. Ryan thought to himself. The sight of a giant anglerfish with two humans visible inside its transparent belly was so bizarre that it immediately attracted the attention of the surrounding mermaids. Alphoe, from all directions, dozens of young mermaids swam toward the giant fish carrying Rhine and Aurora. "Oh no, the mermaids are coming," Aurora muttered, her gaze sharpening as she instinctively reached for the sword at her waist, a masterpiece crafted by the finest artisans of the Rose Kingdom at the behest of the king and queen themselves. But as the sword left its sheath, Aurora quickly realized that her action might be futile. If the mermaids attack us with magic or weapons, what can I do inside the belly of a giant fish? If I tear through the fish's belly, we'll plunge into the depths of the sea. A flurry of terrifying stories about mermaid curses, as told in both royal archives and folklore, filled her mind. After all, those stories claimed that it took just 4 or 5 mermaid songs to summon apocalyptic storms and shatter mighty ships. But here they were, in the heart of the Mermaid Kingdom, facing dozens of mermaids at once. "Don't panic," Ryan said calmly, his smile reassuring. "Actually, mermaids are a relatively peaceful race. Those scary curses and legends are likely just misunderstandings about them. Aurora glanced at the silver-haired youth beside her. Though still anxious, she chose to trust her teacher. Within moments, all the mermaids had surrounded the giant anglerfish, curiously observing the two humans inside its transparent belly. Aurora was surprised to find that, upon seeing the humans, none of the mermaids drew weapons, cast spells, or sang storm-summoning songs as the legend suggested. These strange creatures with fish tails seemed to be acting quite amicably. "See? I told you," Rhine said with a grin. The mermaids pressed against the translucent fish belly, peering at the two humans inside with wide, curious eyes. Aurora felt a little weird about this. It was as if they were animals in a circus, being ogled through a glass cage. "Everyone, come look. This anglerfish has a transparent belly, and there are two human-like creatures inside. Wow, it's true. These two look so ugly and scary. Their upper halves are just like ours, but below the waist, they're completely deformed. I can't bear to look. Are their tails cut off? They've been turned into two ugly, strange, fleshy stumps. You don't understand. Those are called legs. Humans from the surface world are just built that way." "Humans? Are they really humans? How did humans end up in the sea? My mother said only drowned sailors come to the palace beneath the waves. Are these two humans dead?" "Of course they're dead. Why even ask? Look, they've been swallowed by a giant fish." The young mermaids chattered noisily. "Oh no, we've attracted a crowd. And wait, who are they calling ugly? You're the ones with tails. And dead? Who's dead here?" Aurora wanted to argue with the mermaids, but didn't know where to start. Before she could say anything, Rhine naturally joined the conversation with the mermaids. "Yes, we're from the surface world." Rhine easily struck up a conversation with the curious mermaids surrounding them. The strange creature without a tail briefly explained where they came from. After asking a few questions to confirm that the underwater kingdom wasn't vastly different from its depiction in books, he began praising the Sea King's might, the beauty of the palace and gardens, and the wisdom of the Sea King's mother, the Grand Matron. He even complimented the elegance and nobility of the mermaid princesses. His smooth mannerisms made him seem less like a first-time visitor to the underwater kingdom and more like a seasoned guide familiar with the place. Before long, Rhine had won the mermaids over completely. They chatted freely, and Rhine, like the learned mage from Storybook, answered the mermaids' strange questions about the world above with ease. For instance, one mermaid asked, "Why can fish in your upper world swim, even when they're not in water?" Aurora was utterly baffled. "Fish that don't swim in water? We don't have anything like that in the human world." Rhine, however, promptly explained to the young mermaid, "In the human world, we don't call those creatures fish. Although they do soar above our heads much like the fish here, we call them birds. Birds can fly because they have wings, which interact with air much like fins, and tails interact with water." Aurora was stunned and looked at Rhine skeptically. "How did you even know she was talking about birds?" Another mermaid asked. "My friend who once ventured above the sea told me that in your world, the moon and stars appear smaller but brighter than they do in ours. Why is that? Do the moon and stars shrink when they see humans?" "Wait, the stars and moon are bigger in the underwater world? But they're in the sky, aren't they? What's going on here?" Aurora was completely lost. Rhine, however, smiled patiently and explained, "That's an optical illusion caused by the refraction of light. In other words, your eyes are deceiving you." He went on to describe how the light from the moon and stars becomes dimmer when viewed through water, but their apparent size increases due to the way light bends. To clarify, Rhine even took out some paper and sketched diagrams of light rays, angles of incidence, and refraction, explaining how light changes as it enters water. This helped illustrate the difference in perspective between mermaids and humans and the many issues arising from these differences. Aurora barely followed Rhine's physics lesson, but was awed by her teacher's vast knowledge. It also made her reflect on how the world contained such profound secrets, proof that seeing isn't always believing. The mermaids, however, were utterly confused. Despite not understanding much, they marveled at what they considered to be deep and complex knowledge. The human youth speaking with them must be an extraordinary scholar from the upper world. So, while we underwater beings don't know much about humans, humans know so much about us. I thought humans had little contact with us. I assumed they knew nothing about the Sea King, this underwater kingdom, or how we see the world. Human knowledge is truly vast and profound. I can't understand it, but it looks incredibly impressive. The mermaids expressed their amazement after chatting with Rhine. Aurora, witnessing all this, mentally protested. No, this isn't right. My teacher can't represent all humans. Most humans know nothing about the underwater kingdom, let alone study such fascinating topics like the difference between human and mermaid perspectives. Turning to look at Rhine, who was engrossed in conversation with the mermaids, Aurora grew increasingly suspicious. Teacher, are you sure this is your first time in the underwater kingdom? She was certain that the kingdom's records about the underwater world were sparse and entirely legendary. They didn't mention anything about the Sea King or mermaid princesses, let alone the mermaid's unique way of perceiving the world. Even if humans had visited this underwater kingdom before, none could have adopted such a perspective. Sensing Aurora's confusion, Ron explained while reminiscing. I once read a novel where the protagonist belonged to an aquatic race. The story described how ocean dwellers perceive the world differently from humans. I've tried to adopt their perspective to understand their questions better. In the novel, the author likened schools of fish to flocks of birds. It makes sense. Just as humans can look up to see flocks of colorful birds flying by, mermaids can look up to see schools of fish. The story also mentioned that the moon viewed from shallow waters appeared far larger than it does to humans. Years ago, when I first read that passage, I was astonished. I sketched out the light paths using my knowledge and studied it for ages to confirm the author wasn't wrong. Rhine smiled as he spoke, his eyes reflecting a distant memory and a touch of longing for the days before he arrived on this continent. After answering the mermaids' questions, Rhine turned to their next inquiry. Why have you humans come to the sea? Rhine explained their purpose. We're looking for the sea hag, a sea witch skilled in dark magic. We need her help with a small task. Surely you know where she is. The mermaids' expressions immediately changed. Shocked and alarmed, they exclaimed, No way! You're looking for that sea witch? Someone actually dares seek her out? We merfolk wouldn't dare approach her. Are you humans truly that bold? Don't go. She's a terrifying figure who masters dark magic. Asking her for help will surely lead to trouble. The group of mermaids murmured anxiously, their earlier curiosity now replaced with apprehension. The mermaids, who had been chatting and laughing moments before, were now frantically trying to dissuade their human friends from visiting the sea hag. Aurora was baffled by their sudden change in demeanor and asked, Why are you all so scared all of a sudden? What's so special about this sea hag? The mermaids began chiming in one after another. The sea hag is a witch skilled in dark magic. She's hideous and terrifying. She lives beyond a swirling vortex in an underwater forest made of coral. Everything there is horrifying. Just looking at it will give you nightmares for days. Whatever you want from her, even if it's just a simple question, you'll have to pay a price. It'll be something huge, far beyond what you can handle. I've heard that those who sought her help rarely met a good end. She deals only in dark magic, bringing disaster more often than happiness. Her spells demand sacrifice and great cost, rather than fulfilling wishes without consequence. Exactly. Only the most desperate of mermaids and other sea creatures would ever think of seeking her help, and only when they have absolutely no other choice. This doesn't sound too bad, Rhine thought. At most, she's an unscrupulous merchant, not a completely irredeemable villain. He recalled the deal from the original story between the heroine, the Little Mermaid, and the sea hag. After saving the prince and falling in love with him, the Little Mermaid sought the sea hag to grant her human legs so she could stay by the prince's side and gain an immortal soul. The sea hag fulfilled her wish, but at a high price. The potion she gave had severe side effects. It caused excruciating pain with every step and came with a significant risk. If the Little Mermaid failed to marry the prince and earn an immortal soul, she would dissolve in a sea foam and disappear forever. In addition, the sea hag demanded the Little Mermaid's voice as payment. The most beautiful singing voice in the ocean, an incredibly steep price. The process was not a simple spell either. It was gruesome and bloody. The sea hag used a blade to cut out the Little Mermaid's tongue, rendering her mute. Painful steps, the loss of her voice, and the risk of vanishing in a foam. 3 sacrifices for 1 blessing. To be fair, it was a terrible deal. But the sea hag had clearly laid out the risks beforehand, with no deception or trickery involved. Compared to what some human merchants have done, she's not even that bad. Maybe even honest, Ryan mused. After listening to the mermaid's warnings, Ryan spoke firmly. It's fine. We only want to ask her a simple question. Let's see what price she demands. If her terms are too high for us to accept, we'll weigh the pros and cons and walk away from the deal. No one will lose anything. In our world, in the human world, some unscrupulous merchants brag about their goods, but hide the costs until it's too late for people to back out. Realizing they couldn't persuade the humans, the mermaids gave up their efforts. Just then, Aurora noticed one particular mermaid, seemingly the most beautiful and elaborately dressed among them, almost like a princess, fall silent and turn away at the mention of the sea hag. Aurora found it puzzling. She was so curious earlier, asking Ryan all sorts of questions. Why is she suddenly quiet at the mention of the sea hag? What's wrong? Did something about the sea hag strike a nerve? Aurora asked the ornately dressed mermaid. The mermaid appeared not much older than Aurora and had been polite earlier, giving her a sense of warmth. Alpha and Omicron Beta. The young mermaid hesitated, then finally admitted, I've been thinking about going to the sea hag myself recently. Her words stunned everyone. The other mermaids gasped in shock. Why, Your Highness, the 6th princess. Why would you even consider such a thing? Princess Ariel, you're the Sea King's daughter, his most beloved child, and you have the most beautiful voice in the ocean. What could you possibly want that you don't already have? The mermaids were utterly alarmed and began pleading with their princess not to venture into the coral forest where the sea hag resided. Their efforts were even more intense than when they tried to dissuade the humans. Humans might not understand the sea hag's dangers, but how could a princess of the ocean be unaware? And why would a noble princess need to resort to magic and witches to fulfill her desires? The 6th princess? The youngest daughter of the Sea King. Is it really her? Ryan's thoughts raced, and he felt a tinge of surprise. So, we've run into the mermaid princess, the protagonist of The Little Mermaid. Judging by the timeline, this must be shortly after she saved the prince. She must have just learned about the secret of the immortal soul from her grandmother, and is about to seek the sea hag's help. What a coincidental encounter, with timing so perfect it felt as if fate itself had arranged it. Ryan glanced at Aurora and began to wonder. In the story of the Tinderbox, the soldier had also sought out this girl who was supposed to be Sleeping Beauty. Could it be that protagonists destined by fate are drawn to each other like magnets? If that's true, does it mean that even without my interference, these fate-bound characters might interact and create deviations from the original story, resulting in unexpected changes? The mermaid Princess Ariel, known as the 6th princess, listened to her companion's warnings. With a resigned shake of her head, she said, Thank you for your concern, but I have a reason I must seek out the sea hag. Some things can only be achieved through magic, even for me, the cherished youngest princess of the Grand Matron. Something that can only be done with magic. Aurora instinctively turned her gaze toward Ryan. Apart from the black, which she'd only heard about in legends, her teacher was the most powerful mage she had ever met. Through the transparent belly of the giant fish, Ryan smiled at Ariel and said, In that case, Your Highness, why don't we go together? That way, we can keep each other company. Ariel's eyes lit up with delight. The boy's eloquence and profound knowledge had already impressed her and the other mermaids. Traveling with such a learned human scholar was a most welcome idea. Moreover, she had encountered very few humans before. If she wished to be with that handsome prince, she needed to understand human customs. Surely, she would have many questions for this human scholar in the future. Seeing that they couldn't dissuade the humans or their princess, the mermaids reluctantly dispersed. They watched as Ariel and the two humans, still within the belly of the giant fish, swam toward the coral forest where the sea hag resided, disappearing into the blue depths. Oh no, we almost forgot. Humans have entered our kingdom. Such a monumental event must be reported to the others, and to the great Sea King. The mermaids swam off in different directions, spreading the news to their friends, families, and the guards of the Sea King's palace. Before long, the explosive news had traveled throughout the Mermaid Kingdom. In the Grand Sea King's palace, which had just hosted a ball, the Sea King sat upon his magnificent shell throne, gripping his trident. He was astonished by the report from his subordinates. By the sea, humans have entered our underwater kingdom. Such a thing has never happened in my lifetime. No, not in the entire 3,000-year history of our kingdom. And among these humans, one is said to be an elegant and kind scholar. Although he appears to be just a child, perhaps human children are naturally this knowledgeable. I never imagined that humans understood us so deeply, and yet our understanding of the human world is so limited. The Sea King sighed. As the ruler of this vast sea and its intelligent creatures, the Sea King had always been fascinated by the surface world. His greatest regret was that he could not establish relations with human kingdoms. Physiological limitations prevented merfolk from venturing onto land. The rare humans who interacted with them were sailors on seafaring vessels. Yet, for reasons unknown, these sailors feared and despised merfolk, always avoiding them. What a peculiar thing, the Sea King thought. I must summon this human scholar to my palace. Let him be the most honored guest of the sea court and share more about the human world. This knowledge is essential if we are ever to understand humanity and form friendships with them. The Sea King declared to his court and his mother, the Grand Matron. However, the Grand Matron, a proud and aristocratic mermaid with her tail adorned with a dozen oysters, voiced her disapproval. Since the dawn of history, humans and merfolk have been separated into two worlds. The arrival of these humans in our kingdom is surely no good omen. Not expelling them immediately is mercy enough. Allowing them into our grand palace is out of the question. The Sea King, though reluctant to agree with his obstinate mother, dared not contradict her outright. As he pondered how to resolve this disagreement, the Grand Matron received troubling news from another mermaid guard. What? You're saying Ariel went to see the sea hag? Disaster. Disaster. That hideous sea which never brings anything good. She only demands prices that no one can afford to pay. How can my precious Ariel seek her out? Is there a wish that even I, her grandmother, cannot fulfill for her? The normally regal Grand Matron was now frantic, swimming erratically and exclaiming in alarm. Everyone in the Sea King's palace knew that, while the Grand Matron was imposing and unyielding in most matters, she had a soft spot for Ariel. Among her 6 granddaughters, the youngest and most beautiful princess was her favorite. We must find the princess and bring her back before she meets the sea hag. The Grand Matron and her guards hastily swam out of the palace. Watching his mother leave, the Sea King, though worried for Ariel, felt a slight sense of relief. He summoned the ministers of the sea court and issued an order. Spread my decree. This is the command of the King of the Sea. Bring the learned human to my palace as soon as possible. I will honor him as our most distinguished guest and personally seek his wisdom about the human world.